What happens when a disabled veteran gamer wakes up as one of the most feared villains in his favorite RPG game? Our protagonist finds himself waking up one day as Yahello, the infamous Ursula the Mad, a female warrior whose brutal reputation has the entire empire trembling. From commanding ruthless raiders to being feared as a child-eating monster, Yahello's reputation precedes her. But here's the twist. She knows exactly how this story ends. As a player who fought against Ursula in the game, she knows her character's fate. Either die as the Empire's enemy or live long enough to become a genuine monster. So she makes an audacious gamble. Instead of following the game's script, she approaches the Empire as a defector, hoping to enter the prestigious Remnant Academy. It's a place where future heroes train, including the very protagonist who is destined to defeat her in the original storyline. Between mastering Imperial swordsmanship, hiding her true strength, and navigating political intrigue, Yahello walks a dangerous line. But her greatest challenge isn't only external, she's also fighting against the growing darkness within herself. Can someone who knows they are destined to be a villain change their fate? And more importantly, in a world where everyone expects her to be a monster, can she maintain her humanity? Hey, before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get updates on our latest recaps. Now, onto the story. In games, the world doesn't follow any logic. It's designed purely for the player's enjoyment. It's brutal. So many lives are lost with unsettling ease. Someone once said that from a distance, life seems like a comedy. But up close, it's a tragedy. A man sighs as he clicks away tirelessly on his computer mouse, surrounded by empty bottles and instant noodle cups. He muses about how the real world isn't much different from the games. It's harsh, especially for soldiers, and cruel for those with disabilities. For someone like him who is both, it's a double whammy. He accidentally trips while moving his chair, and he falls to the bed in frustration, cursing. His life is falling apart with addiction taking hold. But he doesn't think he's to blame for it. As he drifts off to sleep, a fleeting thought that maybe, just maybe, he's to blame for his current state. Voices cut through his introspection. A loud shout echoes. Yahello! Who's making all that noise so early? He's still disoriented, trying to make sense of it. Did he have too much to drink last night? Something feels off. Wait, what's with his hair? Long hair? He touches it, disbelieving. Panic sets in as he looks down and realizes his body has changed. His voice isn't the same either. He remains in stunned silence, looking at his chest. He realizes that he has now changed into a woman. He's even more shocked that his legs are back. This must be a dream, right? But everything feels so real. Then comes the knock of reality. Yahello, have you awakened? Yahello? Could that be his new name? It seems he's now someone in authority. He tries to compose himself, telling himself to stay calm. He has no idea why this is happening, but this is definitely not his old world. The architecture, the objects, everything screams of an ancient style he's never encountered. Could this be reincarnation into another world? Looking down again, he tries to accept this bizarre reality. But that's not the priority right now. He stands up slowly, testing his newfound legs. A shaky laugh escapes his lips. Whatever the case might be, he's absolutely overjoyed that he's regained his legs. He puts on a glove and clenches his fist tightly. He takes a moment to assess his appearance in the mirror, wondering if he wore the outfit the right way. He reflects on how, even with his body changed, he still ends up being in the military. He can't help but muse on his fortune. Just when I was happy to finally have legs. Fate really is cruel. Accepting his situation, he resolves to adapt and avoid any problems. He now commands his subordinate. All right, come in. The subordinate enters the tent. His eyes widen. The subordinate who entered was a large, imposing gorilla of a man. What is this? He whispers, sweat forming at their brow. He looks like he could eat a person alive, he thinks to himself. He tries to recall, but even in the military, he's never seen a guy who looked this ferocious. The subordinate kneels suddenly. He tries to remain composed, though inwardly unsettled, and thinks, oh right, let's not get scared for no reason. Anyway, I'm in charge. Standing tall, he asks, so, what brings you here this morning? The subordinate explains. I apologize. You haven't yet given orders regarding the prisoners we captured yesterday. The mention of prisoners throws him into confusion. Prisoners, he says in disbelief. The subordinate elaborates. Yes, 20 young men and 32 women. The younger women, per your previous orders, were made to serve the warriors. The protagonist's heart drops as they hear. But no warriors wanted women who couldn't ride horses. Shall we sell them all as slaves? He is shocked. What? Slaves? What kind of nonsense is this? He realizes that these guys were bandits, not soldiers, and the woman whose body he's in now was their leader. He's in disbelief at the situation he was in now. Trying to regain composure, they decide to handle the situation diplomatically. Is it really necessary to sell them as slaves? The subordinate, looking troubled, replies. Yes, but it might be needed. He tries to give a friendly smile. But it only makes the subordinate uneasy and scared. The subordinate quickly concedes. Yes. There's no need. Relieved, he commands. Good. Then send those prisoners back to their families. Families. Understood, replies the subordinate. Switching back to military matters, the subordinate reports on preparations to return to their base. With a curt nod, he dismisses the subordinate, feeling the heavy weight of leadership settle. Managed to get through this, but, as the leader of a band of marauders, sinking onto their bed, they cover their face with their hands in despair. What should I do next? Do I have to keep doing this? Suddenly, their ears prick up at a distant sound. What's that sound? Sudden screams. He thinks, alarm spreading across his face. Screams! They confirm with growing horror. He rushes out to see a scene of carnage and panic, people pleading for mercy and defiant cries of the betrayed. Experiencing bloodshed once again brings out something in him. Hearing the screams and smelling blood, he realizes that something has gone terribly wrong. He hadn't escaped his hellish reality. He had entered hell itself. Remnants of his life as a soldier flashes back to him. Seeing someone die isn't exactly new. He was once a soldier after all. Maybe it was because he hadn't smelled blood in a long time. But the smell of blood now is making him want to vomit. No. If I throw up here and now, they'll know I'm an imposter. He thinks desperately. Lady Halshul. A voice breaks through the oppressive silence. It's one of the subordinates, eyeing Halshul with concern. Another voice chimes in. Are you all right? You don't look well. Halshul wipes away the sweat dripping down their forehead and forces a smile. Oh, it's nothing. Trying to shift the focus, Halshul asks. More importantly, what exactly is going on here? A soldier responds. They're dealing with the prisoners as you ordered. Taken aback, Halshul stammers. I gave that order? He thinks back and remembers commanding to send them all back to their families. The subordinate presses on. You commanded Captain Johann, didn't you? Halshul's mind races. What? He tries to think back. When I said to send them to their families, they had already killed all these people's families. That's why this is happening? Halshul clenches her fist, horrified by the twisted logic, but he knows he can't say anything to arouse suspicion. Looking around, Halshul forces the words out. No, Johann is right. I did give that order. I must still be half asleep. Trying to lighten the mood, the soldier jokes. Well, you did drink 5 bottles of that strong liquor last night. Even for you, Halshul, you must be tired. Halshul winces with a forced laugh, cursing internally. Suddenly he remembers something. By the way, did he say Johann? Stepping out into the sun, he reflects on familiar names. Halshul and Johann. I've definitely heard those names somewhere. Where was it? A soldier cleaning up the aftermath of the battle catches Halshul's eye. They recall. Oh, that's right. They mentioned they were leaving soon. One of the subordinates kneels, asking. Lady Aishanger, is there anything else you need? Halshul, still trying to piece things together, replies. Oh, no. Another murmurs the name. Aishanger Halshul. It's hard to pronounce. Suddenly, clarity hits him. I remember now. Staring into the memory, Halshul recalls the great warrior Johann and the destructive Ursula the Mad. They were all bosses from a game called War of Remnant, a strategic RPG adult game that he had played extensively. No wonder. My clothes were the only ones that looked so unrealistic. Halshul realizes, glancing at his skimpy attire. Now it made sense. Anyway, I don't know how I ended up as a character in a game, but they muse, remembering the hours spent playing it. In the game, the plot involved entering the Remnant Academy to train heroes who would eventually save the world, a very classic trope. But this game also offered a high degree of freedom, and NSFW illustrations unmistakably marking it as an adult game. He chuckles a bit, remembering the hot female character. The shocking realization that he is now that female character fills him with dread. I'm screwed, he says. A thick cloud of dust swirls in the air, marking the swift pace of an approaching group. Halshul races ahead, gripping her horse's reins with steady determination. The name Aishanger Halshul rings in her mind, a reminder of who she has become in this twisted game world. Memories of a character named Ursula the Mad flood her thoughts, an alias for a notorious boss in the RPG she once played. She was the third boss in the game. Known as the toughest adversary, Ursula was a character even her real-world self struggled to defeat. Players nicknamed her Ursula without XX, often referring to her peculiar backstory conveyed through various message boards. Yet, Haoshul knows that detail isn't what's critical now. This character, regardless of everything, holds no future. If her Sella loses to the protagonist, she faces capture and a life of slavery until death. However, if she wins against the protagonist and conquers the Empire, she will later be defeated by the final boss and turn into a monster-bearing shell. She shudders and resolves that she can't let herself be defeated. Determined, she mutters, "By all means, the original story must not happen." A soldier riding beside her interrupts her thoughts with news that they are close to Ordos. "Ah, right," she responds, snapping back to reality. She contemplates hastily formulating a plan before their arrival so she can escape and live life peacefully. She's taken aback at the land that stood before her Ordos, the capital of her tribe. A watchful guard spots their advance. He notices the black wolf insignia and recognizes who it is. "Open the gates immediately! Lady Aishandra Haoshul has returned!" he shouts. Gates creak as her group enters the fortified city. The proclamation of her return echoes through the city as the humbled residents bow down as well. "Wow, so being the chieftain's daughter definitely gets you special treatment," she thinks in amazement as they ride into the streets. Haoshul reflects on the setting's medieval vibe, straight out of the Middle Ages. Eventually, her thoughts circle back to the bandits. She knows their demise is inevitable. One of her soldiers asks, "Lady Haoshul, are you going to see Lord Sirkin immediately?" he asks. She doesn't appreciate his questioning. "Is there a problem?" she demands. The soldier hesitates. "Ah, no," before shrugging it off. Reassuring her, he adds, "Since it's Lady Haoshul, Lord Sirkin won't mind." Inwardly, Haoshul consoles herself. "It'll be the last time I see him anyway," she muses darkly. Her presence is announced as she approached. Lord Sirkin shows a mild surprise. "Haoshul?" he repeats darkly. Haoshul strides confidently towards the chamber, her boots echoing on the stone floor. She seems resolute, her gaze firmly ahead, as the guards follow her closely. "From here on, my plan is to..." Haoshul thinks to herself, determination in her eyes. She needs to convince Chief Sirkin to let her go to the Empire Karas in the west. Her thoughts are racing. "As much as I want to just run away..." She clenches her fist, knowing she must face this challenge head-on. If she flees, she will be branded a fugitive. Steeling herself, she steps into the Great Hall. "Lord Sirkin." She hears someone announce, "Lady Aishandra Haoshul requests an audience." After a moment of silence, she hears a voice from inside. "All right, let her in." The doors swing open and she steps into the room, her silhouette framed by the light. "Good," she murmurs under her breath, taking a step forward, thinking. "It starts now." Ahead of her sits Lord Sirkin, radiating an aura of power. "I must convince this man somehow." Haoshul fights to maintain her composure. "All right." Sirkin leans forward. "It's been 3 months, Haoshul. To think you'd be the one to seek me out first," Sirkin says, almost mocking her. Caught off guard, Haoshul stumbles with her words. That is..." She quickly straightens up and says, "I apologize, father." Sirkin glares at her, suspicious. "You're apologizing to me? And calling me father?" He questions her motives. Haoshul realizes that Sirkin's harsh demeanor means more challenges ahead. "What is this? Were these two not on good terms?" she wonders. She thinks back to how her appearance as the final boss in the eastern regions wasn't part of the settings. Sirkin lifts his cup, the tension palpable. "Fine. Since you're not here to ask about my well-being, state your business." Sirkin allows. Haoshul takes a deep breath and says, "I intend to go to the Empire of the Westerners." Sirkin looks at her, incredulous. "I must have heard wrong. Say it again." She repeats herself. "I asked your permission to go to the Empire of the Westerners." His eyes narrow. "Are you wishing to commit suicide?" Sirkin asks bluntly. He pauses and then softens slightly. "It's understandable you may want to see your mother's homeland," Sirkin continues. "But as you know, they consider us Eastern Kahar people to be nothing but beasts." He looks directly at Haoshul and asks, "Do you think they'd see you any differently being half-blood?" Haoshul's thoughts become frantic. "That's exactly why I need to leave this place quickly. Unless I truly become Haoshul and overthrow the Empire first, I'll meet a horrendous fate." She contemplates, looking at the flames. Finally, Haoshul speaks. "Don't you want to conquer the Great Plains?" This visibly shakes Sirkin. Her words hang heavily in the air. "Those words," Sirkin mumbles. "You know that's not something to be said lightly," he warns, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Haoshul feels the atmosphere shift dramatically. "I understand," she replies, her voice steady. "That's why I intend to go to the Empire," she states again. Sirkin is taken aback, but Haoshul presses on. Ishandra's method to conquer the Great Plains. It's unreasonable, but this is my gamble now, she declares internally, ready to face whatever comes next. With powerful warriors and excellent cavalry skills, many territories of Kahar have fallen to them. However, their expansion was halted due to interference from the Western Empire. Lord Sirkin expresses frustration, stating that they are unable to expand because of attacks from the West. Halshul offers a solution, suggesting that deception might be the key. Sirkin's face tightens in shock at her audacity. Halshul explains that there's an institution in the Empire called Remnant Academy, which nurtures young talents into formidable warriors. Normally, only Imperial citizens can enroll, but she plans to use the special admission system. In this fantasy world setting, many characters from different nationalities and races attend the academy. Most enroll through the special admission system provided to friendly nations. However, this is a pretext to hold young talents from various nations as hostages. Halshul puts forward her plan to remain in the Empire as a hostage to stop them from attacking. Sirkin questions the logic of Halshul's plan, finding it hard to believe the Empire would be appeased by such a gesture. Halshul asserts that the Empire wouldn't want a full-scale war either. Sirkin smirks, mocking the idea that her death in the Empire would merely prove her foolishness. He makes it clear he won't lead his warriors to avenge her. Halshul retorts that the Empire doesn't know that their tribe wouldn't retaliate if she were killed. She points out that, unlike the West, their tribe doesn't respond with immediate war upon the death of royalty. Sirkin is curious if these insights come from Imela, questioning Halshul's knowledge of an empire she's never visited. Sirkin has one final question. The plan involves swearing allegiance to the Empire. Do you think my ambition would end there? He blazes in fury. Halshul proposes they attack the Empire by pretending to align with it. Even Sirkin is taken aback. She questions when their tribe has ever lived up to such promises. She clarifies her strategy to conquer the plains while she's at Remnant Academy, ultimately charging towards Ordo. Sirkin falls silent, his fingers tapping restlessly on the table. Suddenly, he bursts into laughter, startling Halshul. He's amazed by her cunning, comparing her transformation to that of a snake. He finally concedes, granting her permission to proceed with her plan. Halshul tries to make sense of his approval, but Sirkin urges her to act quickly. He adds a chilling reminder that a war could break out, and she could be executed as a hostage before she graduates. With determined strides, Halshul reassures him not to worry as it will never happen. Days later, Halshul reclines in a tub, steam rising around her as she exhales deeply, uttering a soft sigh of contentment. She savors the moment, musing aloud. How long has it been since I had a bath? All the stress I've accumulated since coming here is just vanishing away. The past days, she has been out constantly on expeditions and raids. A single droplet of water triggers her. Halshul's mind is flooded with horrific images of bloodied faces, her expression shifting to one of intense loathing. Her fist tightens as she curses these barbarians. Determined, she resolves not to dwell on them anymore, vowing, "Just watch. Once I establish myself at the academy, I'll expose the dangers these lunatics pose and assemble a subjugation force." Still soaking, Halshul reflects on the passage of time, pondering. By the way, has it already been 15 days since I arrived here? She starts to question what had happened to his real self in the other life. Did I actually switch bodies with Halshul? Or did I just die in that state? She wonders. She speculates what would happen to her if she died in this world. Would she go back to her old one? As these thoughts swirl, she looks at her reflection in the mirror. Embracing her current form, she adjusts to the realization that this body is considerably better than her original one, remarking to herself. Compared to my one-legged reality, this body in this world is thousands of times better, and unable to resist a small laugh. Plus, being such a beautiful maiden. The tranquility is shattered as a voice calls out. Lady Halshul? The messenger stands by the door, announcing that the equipment Halshul had commissioned is now complete. With curiosity piqued, she asks, "Equipment?" Unsure what to expect. Stepping out of the bath and dressing herself, she is presented with a box containing scale gloves crafted from the scales and bones of the silver serpent of the Frost Canyon you hunted last time, per your request. The artisan explains it was difficult crafting such an item from the rare materials that they could only make one arm. As she opens the box, her eyes widen with surprise. "This is..." she stammers, recognizing the item. In a flashback, she recalls the battle with Hercel in the game. Playing as the main protagonist knight, he is mortally injured by the glove. Hercel examines the glove, marveling its craftsmanship. Hercel looks at the knight. "For a guy who claims to want to save the world, is this your best?" she asks with a mockingly. The knight stares at Hercel's injuries. Even injured by an arrow piercing her shoulder, she stood defiantly, almost unaffected. The knight mutters, "That's Hercella the Mad?" With a decisive move, he draws his weapon, infused with electrifying energy, and prepares for a final confrontation. The knight screams, "Hercella!" unable to accept the reality he faces, while Hercella responds with a cold resolve. "That's right, it has to be this way." Locked in fierce combat, he yells, "Losing to a devil like you is," charging forward with all his might. She recognizes it was the crucial weapon used against Hercella in their final battle in the game. The gauntlet. She realizes, understanding its significance. Halsha looks at the metal gauntlet, flexing its claws. The gauntlet shimmers with a cold blue aura, emitting a soft hum. Her attendants ask her if there was anything wrong with it. The sensation from the gauntlet is unusual. "It feels subtly chilly, like my hands dipped in ice water," she muses. Halsha examines the gauntlet, wondering, is it because it's made from monster materials? Even with her physical strength, it's hard to wear for long. One of the attendants asks. "And also, when are you planning to depart for the Empire?" Halsha recoils slightly in surprise. "The rumor has already spread within the palace?" Halsha wonders, feeling a pang of concern. It's a major piece of news, after all. The direct descendant of Khan being sold off as a hostage to the Empire. Halsha internalizes, trying to steel herself. "I'm planning to leave by tomorrow night," she answers. "Understood," her attendant replies. The next day, near the Empire's border. Night has fallen, and the stars are visible in the clear sky. A campfire crackles warmly, with Halsha and a companion sitting around it. "If we continue for about half a day from here, we'll reach the Empire's border," the companion notes calmly. "Honestly, it's very late to say this now, but departing alone for the Empire all of a sudden," he starts, concern evident on his face. "You're Halsha, so I don't need to worry too much, but are you really alright?" Halsha looks genuinely puzzled. Could this guy be really worried about me? Among Halsha's subordinates, he was one of the closest ones. Halsha thinks about how funny it was that in the end, the ones worrying about her here were people like him. A smile forms on her face. It's been a while since she felt camaraderie like this. She smiles confidently at her companion. "Don't worry. What could the weaklings of the Empire possibly do in front of me?" The next day, she is surrounded by spears all aimed at her throat. She pleads for help from her subordinates. But it was too late for that. Back in the video game War of Remnant she played in her past life, they were soldiers of Karl Ross. Karl Ross led humans alongside the 12 Knights and conquered the 5 kingdoms. They expelled all other races and made the center of the continent a land for humans. Achieved by the legendary hero Karl Ross, it's a grand empire. The strongest nation in the game where the protagonist belongs. However, despite such a background, the empire has 2 major thorns in its side, the beast men of the northern snowy plains and the eastern Kahar. Particularly, the most threatening was the Kahar. This forced the empire to build an immense wall, known as the Great Wall Berenginia. Halsha knows that as a barbarian of the east, she wouldn't be able to get in. She reminds herself. "First, I need to calm things down." She plucks something from her belt and holds up a white flag. "Here, look at this." She tries to de-escalate. Halsha faces the soldiers, saying, "Unfortunately, I've not come to fight. On the contrary, I've come to deliver a letter." The soldiers look at each other, uncertain. One steps forward, speaking in French, meaning, "How dare you come here? Barbarian!" Halsha is taken aback. "What, seriously? The language is different," she exclaims, shocked. An eerie light surrounds Halsha as she hears words uttered in an ancient tongue. "Wait a minute. Is this?" She wonders, feeling power surround her. Halsha falls to her knees, her hand covering her mouth as a dark, ominous aura surrounds her. "What is this?" she thinks, realizing she is under some kind of magical influence. "I knew it was magic, but why am I so dizzy?" Halsha wonders if it could be a mind control spell. Her thoughts are interrupted by a voice asking, "How is it?" She gasps in surprise as she could now understand them. He asks again if she can understand them, referring to her as barbarian. Halsha, still dizzy, weakly says, "So you can understand me now, can't you?" Halsha's expression tightens. "How rude, making me, one of Sirkin's children, into this state." She stops in surprise because her speech sounds distorted. "What is this? Why does my speech sound like crappy machine translation?" The magician from behind tells her to stop complaining, admitting the spell they used to communicate still needs improvement. "But anyway, if you are an offspring of Sirkin," the knight starts, hesitating before asking if she is a direct descendant of Ishanger. Holding her head high, Halsha declares, "I am Ishanger Halsha." The knight stares at her in shock, echoing her name. "Halsha?" Recognizing her title, he murmurs in awe. "The Spear of Kahar." Out of nowhere, she draws her weapon and points it at the knight. Halsha's dark expression demands, "What did you just say? Do you have multiple lives?" The knight nervously tries to apologize. I apologize, it was unintentional. Another soldier tries to intervene. But Sir Shane raises his hands and commands. Enough! There's no need to fight any longer. Halshul mocks disdainfully. Consider yourself lucky. Shane, now more composed, asks. So then, pausing before inquiring, what brings the Princess of Kahar here alone? Halshul reveals a scroll, saying she has brought a letter from her father, King Orhan. With a solemn tone, she declares their intentions. We seek peace. Shane suspiciously asks. Peace, you say? Halshul firmly responds. Yes, I will go in his stead. To your remnant academy, for a special admission. Shane is taken aback. A while later, inside the town, a figure is looking through a window. His exhales and a fog of smoke blurs the glass. Shane, along with Halshul, enters the room and announces. Margrave Ludwig, I have brought her. Ludwig, still fixated on the window, acknowledges them with a simple, thanks for your efforts. Turning around, Ludwig states that he has already heard the gist of the situation, addressing Halshul by name. However, he doesn't seem too welcoming, mentioning the alleged trouble Halshul caused for his soldiers. Her eyes widen as the smoke from the pipe reaches her. Wait a minute! What's that in your mouth? Halshul exclaims. With a knowing smile, he answers. Oh, is the mana herb surprising to you? He continues. Well, it must be. They say mana herbs don't grow in the east. Hesitating a moment, amused at Halshul's hungry expression, Ludwig offers. Would you like to try a puff? To which Halshul nods vigorously. Smoke swirls in the air, filling the room with a peaceful haze. Halshul lets out a relaxed sigh as she leans back, enjoying the moment. She sighs contentedly. This is pretty good, isn't it? This mana herb sharpens the senses and clears the mind, yet is far less addictive than tobacco. Halshul observes. Ludwig watches her with a measured gaze. It looks like you really like it. He comments. If you want, I can give you a pack as a gift. He offers generously. But how about you speak honestly? Ludwig's tone shifts. About the peace agreement and Orhan's letter you mentioned? His eyes narrow with suspicion. Isn't it all just a ploy to conquer the Great Plains beyond the Empire's eyes? Halshul's eyes widen in surprise. How did you? She stammers. Well, isn't it obvious? Ludwig leans forward. If you come to the Empire out of the blue proposing peace with no reason or purpose, he continues, it suggests there's some ulterior motive that benefits Kahar, doesn't it? Halshul sighs, her shoulders slumping slightly. You're quite consistent, aren't you? Have you figured it all out? She thinks nervously. Do I have to be honest now? She wonders, gripping her coat tightly. Halshul declares she wants to talk but only with the Margrave. Ludwig glances at Sir Shane, who stands silently by his side. After a pause, Ludwig nods. Very well. He concedes. All right, first off. Halshul begins as she leans back, the smoke of the mana herb still curling through the air. You're absolutely right. Peace is just a facade, she admits. Sirkin intends to conquer the Great Plains, gather the army, and then turn the horses back to attack the Empire. But why confess now? Ludwig questions, his eyes sharp. Even if I knew about the hidden intent of peace, you could still lie. Are you betraying your father now? I never considered him my father, she replies coldly, the mana herb still hanging from her lips. Why would I like a man who forcibly took my empire-blooded mother as his wife? Her voice trembles with anger. Ludwig's eyes widen. Your mother was from the Empire? Now, that's interesting, he mutters thoughtfully. So you were well informed about the Empire. May I hear her name? Ludwig inquires. Imela, Halshul says softly. I don't know her family name, just that she had blonde hair and blue eyes. You don't know her family name? Does that make sense? Ludwig's skepticism is evident. Anyway, that's not the point, Ludwig finally says. If our empire accepts this peace negotiation, no matter what Orhan does, it won't affect Kahar due to this negotiation. Even if we use this to reverse the attack against you, he explains, it would only tarnish the honor of the empire. We have no plans for an all-out war with Kahar's army on the plains beyond the border. So you mean to tell me to accept you and in return, you will aid the empire? Refusing won't stop the invasion of the empire anyway. Halshul clarifies, her voice tinged with frustration. I don't understand, Ludwig admits. I don't know how you plan to help the empire. If it's for revenge, you didn't need to come here in the first place. He continues. Normally you'd be right, Halshul sighs. But the internal atmosphere lately has been tense. If I had stayed, I wouldn't have survived much longer. So I came here partly seeking asylum. Whatever happens, it's better than dying. Halshul concludes, her tone matter-of-fact. Ludwig looks at her, slightly perplexed. You're different from the Kahar warriors I know. He muses. I heard Kahar warriors face death rather than flee. Well, I half fled, didn't I? Halshul retorts with a smirk. Choosing a smaller risk over a bigger one. She reasons. Ludwig exhales sharply, before breaking into laughter. All right, I get the gist of what you're saying, he says, still chuckling. To deceive everyone for revenge, even using the enemy. He nods. I'll personally see to it that you're helped. He calls out. Come in. And the doors creak open. Booted footsteps echo in the room, drawing both of their attention. Halshul's eyes widen again. Oh! A new figure steps through the doorway, a young woman clad in armor. The knight extends a hand and greets Halshul. Nice to meet you, Aishandra Halshul. The knight introduces herself. I am Nigel, a knight of Landenberg. Margrave Ludwig introduces Nigel. She is one of my most trusted aides, so she is more than enough to serve as your escort. Halshul thinks to herself. In other words, they'll be keeping a close watch on me. Well, I did need someone to serve by my side. She thinks to herself. Margrave Ludwig continues. Anyway, now that we have decided to help you. Happy Face 8, guiding the conversation to a more serious tone. You will also have to cooperate with us in a few matters. First, regarding the Remnant Academy special admission you mentioned, I can somewhat handle it from my end. But stresses. The final decision on this peace negotiation direction can only be made by His Majesty the Emperor, detailing that Halshul will testify about the dangers of Kahar. Well, that's not too much, Halshul responds, trying to remain diplomatic. Margrave Ludwig adds. And secondly, pausing for emphasis, do not cause any trouble within the Empire. Not optimistic about it, Halshul responds with a simple, then reassures. I will try my best. A little while later, Halshul stretches out in her room. So exhausting. It was tough keeping all those old men happy. Internally noting, I feel like I'm getting better at lying after coming here. A surprised expression crosses Halshul's face as Nigel appears in view. Halshul addresses her. So you're my attendant, right? Should I call you Madam Nigel? Nigel responds politely. Madam is too excessive for me. Please just call me Nigel, Princess Aishandra. Halshul smiles. Then you can call me Halshul. Using Aishandra might make other Westerners uncomfortable. Halshul inquires. So how long will you be my attendant, Nigel? Until I get admitted to the academy? Nigel reassures her. Unless the Margrave calls me back, I will continue to serve you until you graduate from the academy, Halshul. With raised eyebrows, Halshul acknowledges. I see. Although she was originally a man, she's relieved that her guardian was a woman to make things less awkward. Halshul asks. So, what should I do now? We still have plenty of time. Nigel responds nonchalantly. Yes, nothing special. You just need to have a sparring match with me. Halshul, stammering. Sparring match? Nigel elaborates. Even if it's a special admission, you need to possess the appropriate skills to enter Remnant Academy. She emphasizes. Your notoriety is well known on our side as well, but if it's just rumors, it would be useless. She adds. So the Margrave ordered me to verify it at once. Halshul hesitantly asks. But can we use this place freely like that? Nigel reassures her. It's fine. This place is for the Margrave and his heirs only. Since he has given us this space, there won't be a problem if we use it quickly. Halshul acknowledges. Heirs. Do the heirs here get along well with each other? Nigel's tone suddenly changes. All of the Margrave's children have perished. Realizing her mistake, Halshul quickly apologizes. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Nigel, understandingly, tells her. You wouldn't have known, Halshul, so don't worry too much about it. She advises. Just avoid mentioning it in front of the Margrave. To which Halshul responds. Okay. Nigel draws her sword with an authoritative air. Well then, Nigel, the 10th sword of Landenberg, the shield of the Empire, is coming. Nigel slams her foot into the ground with a powerful stride. Halshul is awestruck. Suddenly, Nigel, swift and poised, rushes in and their swords clash with incredible force. Halshul reels back, momentarily taken off guard, and thinks, what is this attack? As their blades cross again, Halshul wonders if Nigel is truly trying to kill her. She sees Nigel's focused gaze and feels the intensity of her attacks. Nigel's swift kick catches Halshul by surprise. Halshul's vision blurs as she feels the pain of the kick in her gut. Nigel slices her dagger gracefully and hits its mark. Blood drips on the ground. Halshul grabs her wound, feeling the warm blood oozing through her gloves. This is insane. I barely dodged it. Halshul mutters, her breath ragged and uneven. Halshul's mind races. Why is she suddenly trying to kill me? Did I do something wrong? From the look in Nigel's eyes, this is not the playful sparring match Haoshul was expecting. Nigel questions her. This is quite different from what I heard. Or maybe you're playing with me? Haoshul curses internally, realizing she can't afford to back down now. She wishes for a gun, her weapon in her past life. That's right, I was reborn as Haoshul, so I can't do that, she resolves, gripping her sword tighter. Haoshul forces a confident smirk and taunts. Well then? Want to guess which it is? Nigel remains silent, her lips pursed in a tight line. Suddenly, the ground explodes, debris flying as Nigel goes in for another attack. Haoshul barely manages to block it, letting out a startled shriek. Nigel's movements are incredibly fast, her strikes leaving Haoshul struggling to keep up. So fast. I'm barely managing to block. Was it a mistake to provoke her? Haoshul thinks, her heart pounding. Nigel presses her attack, their faces inches apart. As expected of a Kahar warrior, their reaction speed is quick. Nigel comments coolly. But that's all. With a swift move, she sends Haoshul crashing to the ground. Haoshul mutters in disbelief. Huh. Realizing how outmatched she is. I'm dead, she thinks, feeling the sting of her failure. The sound of Nigel's voice echoes in her mind as everything slows down. In a split second, a boot plants itself in Nigel's gut. She winces slightly, spitting blood. Nigel is launched backward, tumbling across the ground as Haoshul's power overwhelms her. Nigel pauses, catching her breath, and wonders aloud. What's this? How? Unable to understand the power just now. She had been sure her last attack would knock Haoshul out. But Haoshul's eyes blaze red with a fierce determination, blood streaking down her face. Nigel takes note of her unfocused pupils and wonders if Haoshul's body is moving purely out of instinct. Nigel steadies herself, gripping her weapon and murmuring, all right. She readies herself for the next round, declaring, let's do this for real now. Warrior of Kahar. Their eyes lock, blue against red. The ground shudders as they prepare for their final, decisive clash. The ground rumbles under their intense fight and blood sprays all over. Both sides took injuries. But neither of them were willing to concede. Haoshul's vision blurs from blood loss as she curses the dizziness overtaking her. She thinks, maybe I've lost too much blood. My vision is darkening, and my body feels out of control. Despite this, she feels an unexpected surge of adrenaline. But somehow, the more blood I shed, the more pleasure ravages through my body. She muses, the unsettling sensation igniting her fighting spirit. A haunting voice encourages her. Not yet. You can still fight. Bare your fangs. Unsheath your claws. Driven by this dark command, Haoshul shifts back to offense. That's right, my opponent is also a formidable monster, she thinks. Haoshul's grip tightens, her resolve equally fierce. A blade comes flying toward her. The two engage in a blistering exchange of blows, each attack more desperate than the last. With a loud cry, Haoshul pushes forward, but Nigel declares, this is the end. She lashes out, cutting Haoshul's leg, causing her to collapse in pain. With her opponent down, Nigel raises her blade to strike the final blow. And that ended the retelling of their battle. And that is the reason you ended up like this? Margrave Ludwig asks incredulously. Why on earth did you fight to this extent? Margrave Ludwig surveys the aftermath, questioning the extent of their injuries. The Margrave scolds them even more. He only asked for a sparring session, not a bloodbath. Nigel, looking guilty, replies, actually, I suggested using real swords. Shock colors Margrave Ludwig's face. Lady Nigel, you did! Why? He demands. Nigel defends herself, explaining. I heard that for a warrior of Kahar, fighting as if their life depends on it is a way to show respect to their opponent, even in training. Ludwig is incredulous. What? Who the hell spread that rumor? Nigel, embarrassed, admits. Wasn't it true? I read it in a book. The Margrave, confused and frustrated, bursts out. No matter how violent the people of Kahar are, they don't try to kill each other during sparring. Haoshul was listening to all of this. She realizes the misunderstanding, upset with Nigel for her reckless adherence to a misplaced belief. Feeling insulted, Haoshul clenches her fist, thinking, isn't that girl completely insane? But Nigel's apology is sincere. I'm deeply embarrassed. I sincerely apologize. Lady Haoshul, it was my fault. Ludwig blames Haoshul. If only you had corrected her properly from the start, none of this would have happened. Haoshul retorts in thought. How was I supposed to know? That night, Haoshul vents her frustration out loud. Lying in bed on my first day in the Empire. I didn't think it would turn out like this. But I guess it's lucky I survived? Reflecting on her intended enrollment in the Remnant Academy, she acknowledges the tough standards required. To survive in this world from now on, I need to fight at least as well or better than that girl. Is that possible? Haoshou thinks as she drifts off to sleep. As Haoshou rests, a shadow of herself peers eerily over her. Hauntingly, it smiles and says, "Who knows? If at that time you had continued to fight with the gauntlet, who would have won, I wonder? Most of the visible wounds are almost healed," someone declares. A gentle healing light envelopes her leg as a healer uses their magic. The healer reassures her. "Except for the severely injured shoulder and leg, we can remove the bandages. However, you must not do such things." The healer cautions, looking pointedly at Nigel. Nigel is doing a one-arm handstand despite her injuries. Haoshou watches, amazed, thinking, "Goodness. Is she already completely healed?" She can't help but wonder. Are all Imperial Knights such monsters? The healer sighs. "Well, Lady Nigel has always been like this. No point in stopping her. I guess I'll be on my way." Haoshou realizes that Nigel is quite famous for being stubborn. She recalls her past military comrades. There were quite a few like her in the military, not bad in character and somewhat capable, just stubbornly and ignorantly principled. She silently rues. Of all people, why does she have to be my attendant? Nigel, catching Haoshou's attention, asks, "Lady Haoshou, how is your body feeling?" Haoshou responds, "I still have trouble walking, but I'm getting better. Compared to a couple of days ago when I was practically a corpse, right?" Nigel expresses relief. "We almost had to delay our schedule because of your injuries." Quietly, Nigel begins. "Actually, I have a question for you, but..." Haoshou prompts her. "But?" Nigel hesitates. "It's a sensitive question." Haoshou is dismissive. "So what? You weren't exactly respectful when we were sparring." Embarrassed, Nigel responds, "That was considering the situation facing an enemy as a knight." Nigel finally asks her pressing question. "Anyway, my question is, where did you learn Imperial swordsmanship?" Haoshou blinks in surprise. "Huh?" Nigel elaborates. "I'm not mistaken. I saw it clearly during our sparring session. Despite being clumsy, from the basic defensive stance onwards, you occasionally used refined sword techniques that differed from Kehar's beastly fighting style." Haoshou is taken aback. Confirming her observation, Haoshou adds, "Even from a distance, it was distinctly similar to Imperial swordsmanship. Isn't that correct?" Haoshou is puzzled. "Me? Did I really?" She tries to recall. "I don't remember it well, but I've never even heard of Imperial swordsmanship. Maybe I just picked it up a bit by watching you." Haoshou thinks to herself. "That's not entirely untrue. I got hit in all sorts of ways, how could I not notice?" Nigel mulls over this. I see. It's not a simple technique you can pick up just from watching once." Haoshou, a bit shy, responds that she'd like to learn it but she doesn't know anyone that could teach her. Nigel offers to be her teacher. Nigel contemplates. "I'll need to get permission from the Margrave first. But I don't think the Margrave will oppose it." The next day, the sun shines on the Margrave's residence. Inside, Nigel is teaching Haoshou the language. Haoshou, exhausted, sighs. "Geez. I ended up studying a foreign language here too." While she was busy complaining, someone strides into the library. Margrave Ludwig enters the room and asks, "Excuse me, do you have a moment?" He walks up to Haoshou and says, "I have a reply from the Imperial family." Haoshou reacts in surprise. Ludwig continues, "Unfortunately, your request has been denied." Shocked, Haoshou bursts out, "What?" The tip of a burnt cigarette, glowing softly and emitting a small stream of smoke. Haoshou takes a drag from the cigarette, looking worried. Margrave Ludwig smokes contemplatively as well. "What's going on?" Haoshou asks bluntly, clearly troubled by the situation. Margrave replies, "We back down first. Given how things have been, shouldn't this be accepted too? Are you planning to fight Kahar?" Haoshou's expression hardens. "No, more than 40% of the Imperial nobility opposed it." Ludwig's face shows a hint of frustration. "They find it incredibly difficult to trust that Kahar wants peace." He continues as he hands the cigarette over. "That information was only shared with a few high nobles, including the Emperor. If the news of Kahar's invasion were to be spread publicly, the entire empire would fall into chaos." He adds with a sigh. "And in the end, it's not my responsibility, it's your problem." Haoshou, confused, questions back. Margrave, now more visibly upset, states, "Your notorious reputation is far worse than I expected. Just how many people have you killed for them to view you this way?" He adds, his voice grim. Memories of countless deaths flash through Haoshou's mind, her face filled with regret and fear. "Well, that..." Haoshou begins, but Margrave cuts her off. "In any case, they say there's no way Aishandra Haoshou would choose to defect. Especially not with the high nobles involved with the southern part of the empire. So, they want me to just go back? No way. If I go back after finally coming this far, I'll be killed for sure." She thinks in panic. Oh, that's not the case, Ludwig says, moving a document toward her. Halshel's confusion grows as she admits. I still can't read. Margrave responds with understanding. Let me summarize it briefly for you. First, do not cause unnecessary conflicts with the Empire or other races. Second, agree to be arrested and punished according to Imperial law if any disturbance is caused. Third, agree to join the Imperial Army immediately if Kahar attacks. Fourth, after graduating from the Remnant Academy, serve 5 years at the front lines as part of the Imperial Army. Fifth, it's my job, so let's skip it. Lastly, if you show any intention of returning east after seeking asylum, you will be considered a spy and immediately arrested. The Margrave finishes. Halshel questions the simplicity of these terms. What? There's nothing major here. Why did they make such a fuss about this? Margrave smirks. I wanted to see you flustered. Halshel, visibly annoyed, slams the table, shouting. Are you messing with me right now? Calm down, Margrave snaps, flicking ash from his cigarette. Are you seriously trying to break the negotiation already? Halshel counters aggressively as she rises angrily. Even if I said that, it wasn't entirely a joke. I wanted to firmly remind you how much the Empire is against you. He calmly states. Keep that in mind, he adds with a hardened expression. Halshel, finally backing down, says, I'll do my best. I just need to follow those rules. Good, replies Margrave, turning away from her as he adds. Once again, welcome to the Empire. Halshel, feeling a mix of dread and resolve, shakes Margrave's hand, muttering, Sure. Later that day, Sir Shane steps into the Margrave's office, addressing him. Margrave, I have heard the details. The 5th negotiation point. You've taken on the political responsibility and become her guardian. Why on earth? The Margrave interrupts him. She is my hope. The Margrave continues. When she first came, I was annoyed and was going to kill her without much thought. But after hearing that she despised Kahar so much to come all the way here, I changed my mind. Isn't the thought alone exhilarating? Seeing Ordos, that accursed Ordos, torn to pieces by my daughter's hands. If I can see that, I am willing to do anything. The Margrave smiles with a look of pure malevolence in his eyes. Halshel lets out a breath, visibly distressed. Nigel watches her closely, finally asking, Why are you doing this all of a sudden? Is something bothering you? Halshel, looking down, replies quietly, No, it's nothing serious. She continues, Listening to the Margrave's story just gave me a lot to think about. Hand trembling slightly, Halshel pulls a piece of cloth from a box, her thoughts racing. I knew the Empire hated Kahar, but their perception is worse than I expected. Nigel responds with concern, stating, It seems it will be difficult to move around openly in the future. It will likely be more difficult than that. The moment you are spotted on the streets, every knight and soldier in the vicinity will come after you. Halshel is shocked. Why? Nigel explains that the Empire has long considered all threats, whether orcs, trolls, or giants, as inferior races and sought to eradicate them all. As Halshel tries to compose herself, she breathes out again, echoing her earlier action. Nigel's question breaks the silence. Why are you doing this all of a sudden? Is something bothering you? No, it's nothing serious. Halshel repeats, though her face betrays her turmoil. She reiterates, Listening to the Margrave's story just gave me a lot to think about. She turns to Nigel, mulling over the words about the Empire's hatred for Kahar, and realizing it's even worse than she thought. Halshel concludes, It seems it will be difficult to move around openly in the future. To which Nigel replies, It will likely be more difficult than that. Nigel explains that the moment Halshel is spotted, she will be attacked. The Empire has long considered orcs, trolls, giants as inferior races and has long sought to eradicate them. That includes the Kahar people. Halshel, frustrated, asks, What should I do? Shouldn't I avoid going and risk getting into trouble? Nigel reassures her. Luckily, if you stay with me, there shouldn't be an issue. Moreover, she continues, there are also many kind-hearted people like Margrave Ludwig. Halshel remains silent. She thinks to herself, coming here without knowing what kind of person manages this place was a huge gamble to begin with. Still puzzled, Halshel wonders why the Margrave is being so kind to her. She looks over the agreement and finds nothing suspicious in it. The next day, Halshel and Nigel prepare for their journey. Nigel informs her, Now we are heading to the Empire's capital, Exlis Chapel. She also asks Halshel if she knows anything about the history or structure of the Remnant Academy. Halshel says she only knows small details. Nigel enthusiastically replies, That's great. As they start their journey, Nigel dumps a stack of books in front of Halshel, suggesting, We have a long trip, why not study with a book? As they depart, Halshel groans internally at the idea of studying. The carriage moves steadily towards its destination. During the journey, Haoshul uses the time to reluctantly dive into the books and also train with Nigel. More than 10 days pass before they reach the capital. Lady Haoshul. Nigel wakes her. We will soon arrive at the Margrave's residence in the capital. Haoshul is amazed that the Margrave has another residence, and looks forward to a proper wash after being on the road for so long. They approach the Margrave's residence. An old butler greets them. Welcome to the Landenberg family's residence, Princess Aishandra Haoshul and Lady Nigel. Haoshul, admiring the splendor, comments on the size and opulence of the residence. The butler, humble, replies that it's not too special. He offers to show them around quickly and prepare a place for them to rest. Haoshul requests that the bathwater be heated up. Meanwhile, back in Ordos, flags wave and warriors prepare for their departure, chanting, Glory to Aishandra! A commander shouts, The warriors are ready for departure! With a determined expression, Lord Sirkin responds, All right. He is on top of the hill and can see rows upon rows of his assembled army. He addresses the warriors. Can you hear my voice? Warriors of Aishandra! We have waited a long time. The humiliation 10 years ago, the 8 years living like sheep. But finally, the opportunity has come. To become wolves again and conquer the Great Plains. Lord Sirkin looks pleased. Darkness cloaks the scene as a sinister voice echoes. Haoshul and Ludwig, if you want revenge against me, you should be well prepared. Out in the courtyard, Haoshul and Nigel are having an intense training session. Nigel is relentless, launching another sweeping attack. Haoshul's agility shines as she skillfully avoids Nigel's blade. Nigel's eyes widen as Haoshul launches her counterattack. Haoshul has managed to split Nigel's sword. Nigel, impressed, states, You've undeniably improved your swordsmanship quite a bit. Of course, the fact that you broke my wooden sword in that stance. It's partly due to your superior physical abilities, Haoshul. Nigel proceeds to compare their first sparring match, declaring Haoshul has gotten much better. Haoshul, slightly exasperated, replies that it was necessary to avoid being underestimated. Nigel mentions, You haven't heard the news, have you? Nigel explains, Recently, the imperial family officially signed a peace treaty with Kahar. And Kahar has been recognized as a pseudo-human race. So, you don't need to worry too much. Besides, as long as the name of Landenberg remains strong, no one will dare to mess with you, Haoshul. In her mind, she muses, I don't know if you've always been an optimist, or if it's just part of your strange personality. You always manage to say the most clueless things. Regardless of Landenberg's strength, or the imperial recognition of Kahar, those who lost everything to Kahar in the past won't care about that, and will come after me for revenge. A voice suddenly whispers in her ear. Why does it matter? In the end, you just have to kill them all, don't you think? Haoshul whirls around in surprise. Nigel asks, What's wrong? Haoshul waves it off. Nothing. But to herself, she wonders if it was just some hallucination. Nigel tells her they should start filling out her application forms. Haoshul examines her application. Aishandra Haoshul Knights Department. They also have departments for magic studies, combat theology, and tactical studies. She likens this to applying for college. Haoshul encounters a clause, reading aloud. Special applicants can demand a duel under the supervision of a professor if 2 people request it. She smiles at this. It seems they're trying to prevent a diplomatic issue if special students kill each other. Suddenly, Haoshul speaks up. It says the entrance exams for general students begin today. Can I go observe to gauge their skills? Nigel hesitates. Yes, as long as you don't cause any trouble. Are you sure about this? Haoshul, puzzled by Nigel's nervousness, shrugs it off. At the exam location, Haoshul walks through the crowded entrance hall. She feels the weight of numerous eyes on her. Approaching the desk, she is met with a flustered receptionist. You wish to observe the entrance exams? Yes, just a moment. Please wait a moment. Haoshul notices that everyone was openly watching her. Surrounded by feelings of hatred, disgust, and fear, she senses the intense emotions without making eye contact. Despite expecting this reaction, it still feels disgusting. Nigel whispers to Haoshul. Rumors certainly are scary. To think so many people would gather. Nigel continues. I've heard of them, but honestly, the rumors are pretty atrocious. Like laughing while massacring people, selling women into slavery, or eating children alive. Never eaten anyone. Haoshul quickly replies. Nigel reassures her. At least the Haoshul I've met wasn't that kind of lunatic. Even if the rumors were true, there must have been reasons behind it. Haoshul silently reflects, thinking. What a strange girl. As she stares at the entrance banner that reads, A cradle protecting the nation. Nigel and Haoshul step through the doorway, reflecting on their lack of issues on the way. Haoshul remarks, I thought some of them would draw their swords and charge right at me. Nigel replies. Isn't it rather fortunate they didn't? Harshal looks in surprise at the people in the room. Harshal recognizes all of them. From Calix Turvan of the Kingdom of Jean, to Asha from the Dwarven Republic of Himmel, and Frida von Phelan of the Northern Archduchy. She thinks to herself that seeing the in-game characters in person brings back memories. Calix Turvan glances their way. Calix calls out to her to take the empty seat beside him. He asks her for her name, and Harshal introduces herself as Aishandra Harshal, while reflecting on how intimidating Calix looks up close. Calix repeats her family name thoughtfully. He then enthusiastically connects, thinking she might be the fierce princess of the Kahar, who even the children fear. Calix introduces himself. They shake hands, and Calix asks if he can call her Lady Aishandra. Harshal quickly insists he just call her Harshal. Showing an unexpected casual demeanor, Harshal comments, "But you're more casual than I expected. Haven't you heard about me?" Calix shrugs it off, saying the regular students don't like him either, so they should get along. Calix praises Harshal for the use of dragon scales and feels a kind of kinship to her as a dragonborn. Calix humorously suggests avoiding the habit of eating humans. Harshal dismisses it quickly as a stupid rumor. Frida von Phelan interrupts their conversation and comments about treating subhuman creatures like humans. Harshal reacts by giving her a dirty look. "What are you looking at, barbarian?" Frida retorts. Calmly, Harshal notes that Frida doesn't look any different from her. Harshal counters with a snide comment on Frida's lack of friends, provoking Frida to threaten her until Nigel steps in, advising Harshal to calm down to avoid causing a scene. Calix chuckles, affirming Nigel's advice. Watching from the side, Asha quips, "What, you're not going to fight?" The group waits tensely in silence. Finally, Harshal says she didn't plan on picking a fight. Harshal turns to Asha, intrigued by the dwarf's intense focus on the proceedings. Asha corrects her, preferring the term half-human, and explains that dwarf is derogatory. Asha introduces herself. Harshal, curious about Asha's interests, questions the appeal of watching seemingly weak fighters. Asha explains her method of study, refining her equipment by observing. Harshal, realizing someone strong has entered, turns with widened eyes. The new entrant catches her attention. It's the main protagonist of the video game she used to play in her past life. The Chosen One. Hero of the Holy Sword, savior of humanity, and the demigod seed. Damien. The people of his world barely know about him. But Damien is crucial to avoiding Harshal's grim fate. Harshal watches intently, thoughts interrupted by Damien's handsome looks, which seem fitting for a protagonist. A sudden realization halts her flow of thought. She mentally scolds herself, wondering why she's even having such random thoughts. Is she becoming a real woman now, even on the inside? Why is she having these weird thoughts? Back to the situation at hand, she ponders why Damien chose the Great Sword meta, considered the worst. Calix Turvan, observing Damien, comments on his promising skills. However, it's the young man opposite Damien that catches Harshal's attention. A towering figure with a commanding presence stands revealed. Harshal doesn't remember there was such a character from the game. According to Asha, his attire suggests he's from the Kingdom of Dane. The man looks up at Harshal with murder in his eyes. "Is he someone you know?" asks Calix. Frida mocks her, accusing barbarians like Harshal of not remembering their victims. Damien calls the Dane's attention back to him. The Dane refocuses his attention back to the battle at hand. The warrior introduces himself as Knut Svensson, son of Sven, a warrior full of pride and honor. Damien gets into his battle stance as he also introduces himself. They start their match and both display immense skill, exceeding all expectations. However, Damien's stamina starts to wane due to his reckless attacks. Harshal, realizing the stakes, hopes Damien won't lose. Because without a win here, there's no admission. Panting, Damien acknowledges the difficulty of his opponent. But he knows there's no choice but to press on. Summoning his remaining strength, he decides to unleash his ultimate attack. Knut recognizes the danger. "Fine." Knut relents. "I'll take you on." With a shout, he also activates his special move Volverk as lightning crackles around him. A while later, Harshal and Nigel are making their way back home. Harshal watches two shadowy figures engaging in a confrontation. Nigel casually asks, "How did you find the entrance exam?" Harshal responds dryly, "I don't really have much to say." In her mind, she continues her reflection. "There were quite a few things that didn't sit right with me." Meeting the protagonist unexpectedly early. A new character, who seems to have a grudge against Harshal at their first meeting. Harshal mulls over the surprising duel between the two, considering that it concluded in a draw. Harshal replays the duel in her mind. Both of them demonstrated skills surpassing other applicants, allowing both Damien and Knut to pass. Harshal reminds herself that she needs Damien to evade a grim fate. She recalls that the War of Remnant game is fundamentally a strategic RPG. The versatility of the protagonist, capable of embodying roles like warrior, archer, mage, and rogue, is crucial. She notices that the Damien in this world has developed his greatsword level to a high degree, but has neglected all other abilities. She asks Nigel if there were other knight-level students at the exam. Judging skills based solely on entrance exams is tricky, Nigel thinks. But she mentions Damien and Canute, and a mage named Ophelia. Herschel wonders if it's only just because of her training with Nigel, but doesn't think any of the students were at Nigel's level. Herschel acknowledges it's unfair to compare trainees to seasoned knights like Nigel. Nigel interrupts her thoughts and insists they start special training immediately upon their return. As night falls, a serene sky full of stars sets the scene. The silence is broken by the sound of a sword slicing through space. After an intense training session, Herschel lies on the floor, exhausted. Nigel stands over her, commending her hard work and stressing that real combat experience is the key to improving her swordsmanship. Reflecting under the night sky, Herschel emits a tired sigh. She attempts to gather her thoughts when Nagel curiously asks, "What's on your mind?" Herschel, still catching her breath, replies, "Oh, just a bit of everything." She then confides her anxiety about starting as a freshman the next day. Nigel reassures her that she has nothing to worry about because she is already quite strong. As the night draws to a close, Nagel casually suggests, "It's late, so shall we bathe together?" Herschel is too tired to think, so just goes along. Herschel's surprise is evident. She senses something amiss. "Wait a minute." Right then, Nagel steps forward to get into the bath. Herschel's shock is evident as she realizes the predicament she is in. Nigel dips her toes into the steaming bath, feeling the calming warmth embrace her. Nigel relaxes into the bag with a sigh. Herschel stiffens, her face turning beet red as an awkward realization dawns on her. Nigel notices immediately and asks, "Lady Herschel? Are you feeling unwell?" Herschel freaks out inwardly. "Of course I am. I was originally a man, even though I'm a woman now." Her thoughts race back to her past life when she had perfectly functioning legs and many intimate relationships. But this, Herschel's mind struggles to reconcile her new reality. Nigel, completely oblivious, just leans in. "This feels too sudden?" she thinks. She reasons that this is her new body now and physically it's okay. But she's still weirded out. Nigel starts to feel guilty. "Even though Lady Herschel said it's fine to bathe together, I should have kept a certain distance." Feeling awkward, she announces, "I will take my leave now." Herschel scrambles to manage the situation, nervously stammering, No, it's just that this is our first time bathing together." Trying to ease the tension, Herschel asks, "Could you scrub my back at least?" Nigel agrees, beginning the task with a bar of soap. Silence hangs heavily between them as soapy water trickles down Herschel's back. Herschel thinks to herself, "Good grief. Asking someone to scrub my back like an idiot." She finally concedes internally. "Since I have to live with other women now, I should adapt. I can't keep acting like this forever." Her attention back to Nigel. She also still wants to be kind to Nigel, however, it's not easy. She recalls Frida speaking to Nigel earlier today. Frida's eyes narrow. "You. I've seen you somewhere before. Can I get your name and title?" Nigel responds, "I am Nigel, the 10th Sword of Landenberg." Frida's reaction is intense. She seems shocked beyond words. Nigel asks, "Is this a problem?" Frida can only blankly stare, her mind reeling. Behind them, Herschel watches. "I vaguely heard during the last spar, but didn't dwell on it. If Frida makes that kind of expression, the original Nigel must have been an incredible person." Yet Nigel gave up her position to serve Herschel. Nigel suddenly excuses herself and accidentally bumps into Herschel. Herschel lets out a shriek. "Are you alright?" Nigel asks, but it looks like Herschel has fainted standing up. The next morning, Herschel and Nigel are greeted by Calix on their way to the academy. "What's that?" Calix asks. Herschel has 2 pieces of cloth stuffed up her nose. Herschel describes the previous day's events as quite stimulating. Calix, not aware of the situation, agrees with a laugh. His body was also built through all sorts of stimulation. Nigel smiles inwardly. Herschel casually thinks, she's a training addict too." Still contemplating, Herschel finds herself intrigued that she has more muscles compared to Nigel. Must be natural talent. Calix notices that they're moving into the dormitory today, and offers to show them around. He gives them the grand tour. Walking through the halls, they approach the fitness center, a place promising rigorous training. Inside, Calix explains, "Here, the 2nd and 3rd floors are dorms for freshmen and upperclassmen respectively." He mentions that he wants to introduce Herschel to other special admission students, but there was only one student of the fairy race is currently here. Harshal's eyes widen. Fairy? She stammers, astonishment evident. Harshal is totally excited to meet an actual fairy. She's like, no way, a fairy! I never thought I'd see one for real! Apparently, in the actual game world, you can't see fairies unless you do something extreme like setting the world tree on fire. She's racking her brain, trying to remember if there was ever a fairy at the academy before. Suddenly, a knock on the door. Calyx says, well, here we are. Calyx warns her not to be too surprised. He introduces himself and asks if it's a good time to introduce a new student. A new student? A voice mumbles from within, then bam, the door opens and a fog of odor escapes the room. The smell hits Harshal hard. What is this smell? She wonders, grimacing. Out steps the fairy, looking a bit tipsy, asks again. Is this the new student? They stare at each other for a moment. The fairy's definitely had a few too many drinks. Harshal feels a familiar vibe coming from the fairy, like she's seen or felt it before. Was it her old self? She whispers to Nigel. Is this seriously what fairies look like here? Nigel whispers back that it's her first time seeing a fairy too. The fairy retorts back playfully about being too harsh on her and surviving 300 years. Calyx chimes in, suggesting the fairy maybe should cut back on the drinks. She's a bit sassy, saying if she could stop drinking, she'd have graduated already. The fairy introduces herself as Fernesia Mercelius Epiraxis, or just call her Fernay. Fernay then asks Harshal's name, who introduces herself as Harshal Aishanger. Fernay laughs, saying she's been here for 15 years and they probably won't see much of each other. Before leaving, Fernay tells them to do their best, then shuts the door in their faces. Back in their room, Harshal and Nigel are left pondering about Fernay being here for 15 years, but the program was only for 3 years. Harshal drops down on the bed, feeling exhausted. It's a chore navigating the academy. Nigel reassures her. It's complex, but the facilities are nice. Harshal agrees, but mentions the entrance exam felt very military, but everything else seems relaxed. Then Harshal thinks about the perks of being a special admissions student, private dorms, free dress code, voluntary attendance, but notes it's exclusive to a few. Only 7 special students, including herself. Harshal reminds Nigel of the upcoming entrance ceremony. Harshal's about to get ready when Nigel reads an official letter clarifying that special students won't participate in the entrance ceremony. The special students get to wear whatever they want, and it disrupts the uniformity of the event. What? Are they really making such a big deal about us? Harshal is shocked. Harshal speculates that the special students might need guards to keep regular students from causing trouble later. Harshal opens her pack of magic cigarettes. She can't believe she's already finished a whole pack. Nigel, do you think the academy will supply magic cigarettes as well? She asks. Nigel breaks the news, they gotta buy them. Even special admission students aren't exempt. Harshal sighs, disappointed. During her military days in the real world, they'd give a tobacco allowance even if you didn't smoke. Nigel's all like, then why don't you just cut down? Giving Harshal that piercing stare. Harshal snaps back, saying she'd quit a long time ago if she could. Nigel remarks that she sounded like the fairy earlier today. Then, Nigel hands her some documents. It's the course syllabus and dormitory regulations. Harshal's deep in thought, reflecting on how the syllabus feels like a mix of military and university elements. The first year is all about basic combat and theoretical training. From the second year, it's advanced courses, self-directed and preparing them for deployment. Harshal scans the course list, seeing she'll be busy with basic courses. One word catches her eye: faith. She remembers reading about it before. Turns out, the Remnant Academy started as a military academy founded by Emperor Carolus. Over time, the academy evolved, adding various departments and courses. One new addition, the Empire's largest religion, the 11 Gods. Religious courses mixed into night training? Harshal mumbles to herself while laughing. She decides she won't touch those faith courses. Nigel leaves her to rest for the day. Sunlight streams through the window. Harshal reflects on her situation, her new routine about to start. She strategizes her time in the academy. First, she needs to connect with influential figures, like Damien. And also handle the ones hostile toward her. But besides that Canute guy, most others are nothing to worry about. She worries about her living expenses. She contemplates for a moment, picking up her sword. Selling this would be crazy. She thinks aloud, eyeing her sword, which looks pretty valuable. Academy students are automatic C-rank adventurers. If she needs money, she can take quests from the Adventurers Guild just like in the game. She notices some inscriptions on the sword. One of the 12 swords that protect humanity, median. She reads. Could it be referring to the 12 Knights of Emperor Carolus? She recalls that Harshal had this sword before possession, wondering if it belonged to Harshal's mother. Harshal considers that if this sword was related to the 12 Knights, then her mother Aimila could be connected to Median, one of the Empire's heroes. What's the connection, though? Enough thinking, time to eat, she decides. The sun sets as she heads out. At the dining hall, Asha greets her warmly. Nigel and Harshal join Asha, who's excited to catch up. Asha's been busy in the dorm upgrading equipment. Harshal asks why she was alone. Asha explains she doesn't need an escort. Harshal's intrigued. Asha's machine is both her friend and guard. Asha asks if Harshal is prepared. Asha casually mentions they've got basic sparring coming up to show off their strengths on the first day as special students. This surprises Harshal. Sparring? As the meal is being served in front of her, Harsha is deep in thought about the upcoming sparring match. She still hasn't gotten over her previous sparring match with Nigel. Sparring doesn't bring back any good memories for me, she thinks. But she quickly reassures herself. Still, thanks to my relentless training, there's no way I'll lose to the garbage here. She should be thankful for that, right? She thinks as she glances at Nigel. Then, a thought hits her. Wait a minute. Actually, this is a good chance, isn't it? She thinks, realizing she can use the sparring match to show her dominance. If I can show my overwhelming power, the ones who've looked down on me like I'm trash will start groveling before me. The determination turns dark for a moment. If it comes to that, I'll kill them if I have to. She pauses, then snaps back to reality, reminding herself that thinking like that could get her into deep trouble. As she's deep in her thoughts about the hallucinations she's been experiencing lately. Could it be the original Harshal's ghost clinging to her? Should she perform some kind of exorcism? Across the room, she spots the arrival of Frida. Asha suggests calling her over, but Harshal knows better. There's no way she'd come over here with me around. Right, makes sense. Asha agrees. She decides to focus on not making more enemies. After all, Frida isn't in the same year, so they rarely cross paths. I should stop making enemies and try to get along. And she resolves to figuring something out. The next day, the academy's sparring grounds are bustling with people. Harshal straps on her weapon, gearing up for the battle. She stands among the crowd, a little bit unsure. She checks her new gauntlet. She ditched her frostbite gauntlet since this was only a sparring match, and bought herself a similar one. Tight on funds, Harshal thinks about finding work after class to support her habits. She's distracted though, as a familiar voice calls out to her. It's Asha, who comes running up with her weapon in tow. She's grinning, excited about showing off her new gear. Harshal comments on Asha's stylish changes, but zones out when Asha starts explaining all the nerdy stuff. They're almost late and hurry towards the sparring area. The spectators murmur, spreading rumors about Harshal. Some even think she might eat people, guessing by her fearsome reputation. Two guys in the crowd gossip, talking smack about her and eyeing Asha greedily but not in a cool way. It pisses Harshal off. Asha remarks that Harshal's already quite popular. Harshal corrects her. It's more like infamy, not popularity. But Asha, ever the optimist, says, infamy is a type of fame too. Trying to see the brighter side. Then, Harshal drops the big question. Asha, do you want to be famous? Asha's all in, wanting to spread her family's name throughout the empire to attract clients. Harshal is reminded that half-humans don't share their technology to the outside world. Asha seemed different. A man's voice echoes across the grounds, calling everyone to gather. The man introduces himself as Carl Ross Fernandez, their instructor for humanoid combat. In this world, the instructor begins, the cadets hanging on his every word. He explains the various combat professions, listing frontline fighters, mages, priests, paladins, archers, and more. He continues, emphasizing the importance of understanding these roles and learning appropriate countermeasures against each. Well, I understand the joy of admission has made you all relax, he says, staring seriously at the group. But your current level is no more than that of novice knights, he adds, making the cadets squirm. Harshal listens as he continues his speech, warning them that until they reach a certain standard, there won't be much time for fun. Harshal then introspects, noting the soldier's disciplined demeanor and thinking to herself that he's a soldier through and through. However, she admits that the lecture is valuable as it teaches warriors and mages how to counter each other. Harshal, not being from a world with wizards, finds this all the more interesting. The instructor's voice draws back everyone's attention as he announces that they will proceed with free sparring. This will be a chance to assess their abilities and observe their peers. A cadet raises a hand to ask if they can pick any opponent. As long as the opponent agrees, it doesn't matter, the instructor Carl replies coolly. The cadet chuckles. It's clear he already had someone in mind. Harshal remembers he's the person who seemed to target Asha earlier. Her thoughts drift, wondering if this person wants to fight Asha specifically. Harshal's mind flashes back to Asha's exceptional in-game abilities against humanoid and mechanical enemies. She laughs to herself thinking that this guy's in for a big surprise. The instructor gives them 20 minutes to find a suitable sparring partner. The cadets scatter, buzzing with excitement. Herschel ponders her own partner, noticing that Asha is already paired up. Frustrated as nobody wants to make eye contact with her, Herschel feels her intimidation tactic is pointless. "Huh!" Herschel exclaims, her eyes darting around. Then she spots someone, Damien, the protagonist, in all his glory. Watching him, she decides to make her move. "Hey, Blondie!" she calls out, catching his attention. "Your name's Damien, right?" she continues. Damien, a bit taken aback, acknowledges her. "Yeah, I'm Damien. What do you want? Are you asking for a spar?" Herschel, still calm and collected, expresses that she was curious about him from the entrance exam. She thought he might be a worthy warrior to fight alongside with. Damien contemplates her words, intrigued but cautious. Herschel extends her hand, proposing they get along since their skills seem compatible. Just then, Milia steps in between them. "What's up with you? I'm more interested in the guy behind you," Herschel quips, a slight edge in her voice. Milia tries to warn Damien. "Don't be fooled, Damien! Kahar is rumored to perform soul plundering." Herschel reacts instantly, demanding to know what Milia means by soul plundering. The cadets around start to murmur, suspicious of the drama unfolding. Milia, pointing accusingly, questions Herschel's revealing outfit, showing off her hips and all that. Herschel, surprisingly candid, admits she has no excuses for her attire. "Anyway, I have not interest in men weaker than me. I just thought you had decent skills and wanted to get to know you better," Herschel declares while Damien smiles awkwardly. But Milia isn't letting it slide, challenging. "Don't lie. Are you saying you're stronger than Damien?" "Yeah," Herschel says, putting out her magic cigarette. "If you don't believe me, let's spar and find out. I'll go easy on you," she says, a wry smile forming on her face. Herschel ponders about the character Milia. She's the classic childhood friend who's head over heels for the protagonist, Damien. She follows him into the Night Academy. But no matter how much she trained, her skills never quite matched up to the others. Talk about a hit to the self-esteem. Frustration built up, and eventually, she wandered down a dark path, literally becoming a demon. Not exactly the fairy tale ending we all hoped for. Herschel finds herself reminiscing about how miserable both of their fates were in the original storyline. She ponders why a game she bought for fun has so many tragic endings. Enter the present. Herschel is now standing before Milia asking her to spar. Milia seems caught off guard. "Why me?" she thinks. Confused, she asks why Herschel didn't pick Damien instead. Herschel throws a challenge her way, teasing about Milia's earlier doubts concerning her strength relative to Damien's. Milia seems baffled. The truth is Herschel doesn't want to show her real skills against strong opponents. She doesn't let up. "How about this?" she asks. Herschel ups the stakes, vowing if Milia wins, she'll stay away from Damien. Milia accepts the challenge with conviction. Damien, obviously worried, softly calls out to Milia, while wondering if he should have a say in this. Meanwhile, instructor Carl Ross is browsing through the sparring list. He's unimpressed by the turnout, just half of the expected number participated in the sparring. Announcing the start of the first basic spar, Carl lays down the rules. It's simple enough: surrender or get incapacitated by an attack. And for safety, weapons are coated with hardened slime to blunt impacts, but he warns anyone aiming to kill will have him to deal with. Special caution towards magic users to keep their power under control. Herschel and Asha chat briefly about the peculiarities of hardened slime. Herschel's a bit impressed with this fantasy world, but is interrupted when the first match is called. Herschel cheers Asha on. "Good luck!" The arena sees its first bout between Asha and a regular student. The dude mocks Asha for wielding his lance in ground combat. Intriguing, right? He throws out a sleazy comment, suggesting Asha should join his group rather than getting her face marred. Unfazed, Asha jabs back confidently. She then activates her backpack-turned-jetpack, launching into epic moves. Herschel's jaw drops. This is stuff right out of the game. The opponent, initially playful, quickly realizes he's in over his head. Asha activates her jetpack and charges in. "Here I go!" The ground shakes as she takes off. And so that day, Herschel witnesses an uncomfortable truth. She realizes that there was nothing special behind Asha's critical hit capability, which was immensely high against humanoid enemies. The hit connects hard, the sound is brutal. The opponent is hurled, almost comically, by the force of the jet-propelled strike. Turns out, Asha's advantage stemmed from her stature, making her strike zone deceptively low. A few moments later, there's a splatter of blood on the ground. Herschel stands among the stunned crowd, looking down at a fallen opponent. "Really, out of everything I've seen since coming to this world," she murmurs. "No. Out of everything I've seen in my life, this would definitely be in the top 3 most brutal scenes. With a hint of dark humor, Yahello reflects on personal loss. Though I've grown quite numb since losing my lower body long ago, it's still terrifying. Meanwhile, Asha returns from the arena. Her lance was cracked. She chuckles nervously. I've really messed up this time. Back home, I didn't have to think about height differences. Recognizing the absurdity of the scene, Yahello gives a friendly jab. But it was refreshing, wasn't it? Soaring with a rocket and sending your opponent flying, it was totally awesome. Asha's flustered response was, Really, you think so? But looks like the others, however, seem more freaked out than impressed. Yahello yawns. Things are getting boring. It'll be my turn soon, she thinks. She looks on as Damien has his match with another student. Maybe because there was such a big accident from the start. It's not really thrilling to watch. Damien easily dominates his opponent. Looking at Damien, she thinks of their earlier conversation. It's Canute, right? Damien asked her. The person you're worried about. Perplexed, Yahello asks Damien. How do you know that? Damien, with a chuckle, reveals. He's been calling your name since the entrance exam. Anyway, I requested a rematch to finish what we started back then. But Canute refused. It's like it's hiding something. Damien reveals to Yahello, thinking it would be good to warn her. Yahello flicks her sword as if realizing something. You're like me, aren't you? For the sake of your goal, holding back your true strength is no big deal. Boom! A loud impact and intense combat brings Yahello back to the present match. Wait! One dude pleads. His opponent has barely broken out a sweat. But she's already disarmed him and has him pinned to the ground. Yahello's eyes widen. Ophelia Sigmilis, the second daughter of Count Sigmilis. This is the first time seeing her up close since the entrance exam. Ophelia's swift and concise in combat. It's not flashy, but it's terrifying. Invisible magic. That's really terrifying. Yahello thinks that she's not the only dangerous one here. Ophelia calmly pulls out a magic cigarette and turns to Yahello with a smile. Yahello's got their nerves up. Why is Ophelia grinning creepily like that? She's busy thinking over her popularity, or infamy, at the school when her match is finally called. The whole scene shifts to an open area with everyone gathered. The tension's so thick you could cut it with a knife. Yahello and Milia face off. Yahello has a few words for Milia. When we first met today, I said I'd go easy on you if we sparred. But controlling my strength might be hard, and it would look weird to knock out a friend of a friend. Yahello's grip tightens on their sword. She gives off a menacing vibe and asks, How about you just give up? Milia looks annoyed. What? Did you say to forfeit? She questions, but there's no way she's backing down. She smirks and throws a taunt. Are you by any chance scared you will lose? The absurdity of it. No way it's gonna happen, Yahello thinks. Come on, I'm giving you a chance here. She offers Milia again. Won't be my fault you get hurt here and can't go on a date with Damien later, Yahello says teasingly. Milia looks taken aback. She's obviously flustered. Things seem personal. Amelia's clearly got issues with Yahello getting close to Damien. She just couldn't stand it. What did I do wrong? Yahello mutters, deep in thought. Milia goes on the attack, but Yahello easily dodges them. Suddenly, Yahello's on alert. A sword is flying right at her. It almost connects, but she's able to back away in time. Yahello pauses for a moment. This duel, she muses. Clearly, it's more than just a fight, it's symbolic. This sparring matches to see whether the Princess of Kahar is truly capable of defeating dozens of knights in an instant. And also, this could be a good time to accurately gauge Ursula the Mad. She couldn't ignore her existence forever. Ever since the dream started, she's been trying to gain control of this body. That was her plan anyway. But looking closely at Milia. But that girl. Milia is deemed too weak. Beating her won't prove a point at all. If this is what being Knight Apprentice level looks like, no wonder the Empire nearly falls, Yahello says. She throws one last offer to Milia. This is your last chance, forfeit now. Milia's got fire in her eyes. Not yet, she shouts, lunging forward with resolve. Suddenly, there's a bam. Yahello's counter hits hard. Milia's sent flying, her shield shattered. Yahello stands unfazed. Milia's down, coughing up blood, trying to understand just what hit her. How did the shield break with one hit? She's desperate to understand the power mismatch. Yahello tells her all her warnings were for Milia's sake, but she wouldn't listen. Shut up! Milia screams. The final collision is brutal as Yahello's blade strikes true. Milia can barely stand, her enemy's grip pulling her close. Expressionless, Yahello holds the weakened Milia. Well, everything else is pathetic, she cruelly states, wiping blade blood. but acknowledges something. But your will to fight is commendable. Harshal stands over Amelia's limp form. Later, Harshal and Damien stand side by side, contemplative. I ended up sending your friend to the infirmary, Harshal mentions. The response is calm, almost too calm. She'll be fine in a day. Milia did her best and will accept the outcome. Harshal's taken aback. It's actually scarier he didn't get mad. She reflects on her even-tempered companion. And he finally speaks, nonchalantly asking, Girl from Kahar, was your name Harshal? Harshal is surprised, unsure how to respond. It's the red-headed girl, Ophelia, all smiles, but it's a little unsettling. She approaches Harshal with a weirdly cheerful demeanor. Harshal's taken aback. What does this high-ranking noble want with her? Harshal doesn't waste time. Need something? She asks, almost too casually. Introductions ensue, revealing she's Ophelia Sigmilis, daughter of Count Sigmilis. Ophelia, judging Harshal's recent battle attitude, offers more sparring practice. She claims she can help with that. Harshal, skeptical, asks if Ophelia believes she's a match. Ophelia quickly denies any wish to duel herself, pointing out Harshal's infamous reputation makes finding sparring partners difficult. And here's the kicker, Ophelia's offer includes not just sparring partners but paying for Harshal's academy tuition. The academy tuition must be a burden for you people, Ophelia smiles. But that's not what Harshal needs. She asks for living expenses instead. Ophelia's expression suggests a mix of disbelief and disdain, but she agrees to cover whatever Harshal needs. Then she drops the real revelation. The favor is minor, just with a slight hitch. Ophelia wants someone killed later on. Say what? That's a murder request in exchange for arranging sparring matches? She must be crazy. Harshal fires back on how troublesome that would be for her too, especially causing chaos in the Empire. Ophelia assures her this won't be a problem, and she's choosing someone that beyond her target's influence, but Harshal suspects there's family drama behind it. And yep, bingo! It's Ophelia's very own sister, Claire. A mix of grim planning and cold assurance, Ophelia promises to clear the way for Harshal when the time comes. Harshal spins in her head, trying to wrap her brain around this twisted family affair. This chick planned fratricide from the get-go. Despite the unsettling nature of all this, she feels the Sigmilis family issues will need to be tackled eventually. It's a decision made, Harshal accepts. She preps Ophelia to gather participants who wouldn't be affected much by injuries, a practical request for her upcoming battles. Facing the group of potential sparring opponents, Harshal readies herself, eagerly shifting her focus back to honing her skills. The crowd sees her as terrifying, and they're not wrong. Harshal grips her sword with determination. This is her chance to push her limits without worrying about the repercussions. The first contender steps up first, shield raised but visibly nervous. Harshal's grin broadens, here's her shot to cut loose. The spar begins with fury. With a swift leap, Harshal barrels towards her opponent, almost becoming a blur in motion. His reaction, or lack thereof, is comical. He's shocked, silent, admitting his lack of preparedness. But before he can even think about responding, Harshal lands a powerful blow. As the dust settles from their skirmish, Harshal stands victorious over the toppled opponent. She's no longer Hercella the Mad, she's Harshal from the Remnant Academy. And she's ready for her the next round. The training grounds at the academy are vast and empty. There's an eerie silence, broken only by the faint wind. Harshal stands confidently over her fallen opponent, reflecting on her recent battles. She's proven her strength, but to her, it's just the beginning. Though she's taken down two, including Milia, she feels she's only scratched the surface. Suddenly, she's alert, sensing something off. She looks down to see her latest foe lost his fingers in the skirmish. Despite holding back, her strength is terrifyingly potent. Harshal wonders if this hardened slime coating on the weapons is useless. Her thoughts drift back to the original game. She was a boss monster, after all. Even now, she feels she could take down Damien's group without a sweat. She lays the fingers on her downed opponent. She needs to dial it back before she really hurts someone. The crowd watches as another challenger steps up, their faces a mix of fear and awe. He hesitates, sword ready. Harshal comments on his apparent lack of enthusiasm. She suggests he's the kind who's made many women weep, a strange insult. She prepares to confront this new opponent. She charges, sword raised, and they clash with a loud crackle of steel. Her opponent grimaces under the force of her attack, struggling to hold his ground. Wow, really? She mutters, unimpressed by his efforts. Don't you think you're being kind of pathetic? She jeers, almost amused by his shaky stance against her. With a swift, unrelenting move, Harshal sends him flying, blood trailing in the air. The crowd gasps as he crashes to the ground. Harshal hopes he doesn't die from having his neck twisted like that. She looks at the instructor and notes his apparent indifference at whether the students get hurt or not. Harshal finds this darkly amusing, likening it to a certain nation's military. Next, she calls, ready for the next opponent, who trembles in fear. It's a mage this time, standing nervously, staff in hand. Only tricky mages left now, she muses, assessing her chances. She doesn't know much about combat magic at the academy, but most of the spells used so far are pretty basic, not much to worry about. Confident, she prepares to face him all with her formidable strength. Elsewhere, in the infirmary, Damien watches over the recovering Milia. He's concerned, not just for her physical state. Milia stirs, waking with a groan. Damien asks if she's okay, gently pressing for the truth. Milia reassures him, though she admits she feels bad for making him worry. But he isn't convinced. Her recent behavior was unlike her. "Why push yourself like that?" he asks, concerned. "You're not usually like this, Milia." Milia grips the sheet tightly, hesitant to share what's truly bothering her. She was scared, terrified of Halshul. The monster's eyes, the scent of blood, it all haunted her. The creature's deceivingly friendly demeanor while speaking to Damien was the most chilling part. Halshul's out on the battlefield, charging with fierce determination. Boots slam against the ground as she races forward, cloak billowing behind her like a shadow. She's focused, ready to test the limits of her power. "Let's see," she mutters, eyes narrowing with anticipation. Her opponent stands with a staff in hand, wondering what magic she'll unleash. The tension hangs heavy. Suddenly, flames shoot into the sky, blazing with fiery intensity. Halshul takes note, 4 giant fireballs, and the caster looks shaky. Yikes, maybe he overestimated a bit. Still, he manages to conjure multiple spells at once. That's something, right? A sharp sensation jolts through Halshul, like static electricity. It's a feeling she recognizes, reminiscent of the magical translation when she arrived at the Empire. Did he just try, and fail, to cast a direct spell on her? Curious. Meanwhile, Ophelia watches the magical flow, noting it was indeed binding magic. It wasn't strong, but it dispersed quickly. Why didn't it work? Could Halshul have some crazy resistance to magic? Frustrated, the mage clicks his tongue. It can't be helped. He realizes he's got to go all out. He summons a barrage of fiery attacks, striking the ground around Halshul with explosive force. But Halshul is cool as ice, planning her next move. She knows she's got to wrap this up, and fast. With a swift motion, she launches her counterattack, cutting through the air with precision. The incoming fire spells shatter like glass, as she effortlessly navigates through the chaos. A dance between flames ensues, with Halshul darting through the explosions like a shadow. But her sword cracks. Dang, calling it a hardened sword was an overstatement. Undeterred, she stands firm, summoning her resolve. The next explosion shakes the ground, showcasing the raw intensity of the battle. Her opponent clenches a fist, shouting in perceived victory. All right. But there's this lingering feeling in the air. The spectators exchange glances, some impressed, others skeptical. Suddenly, from within the dust cloud, a hand flies out and goes directly for the mage. Without skipping a beat, Halshul closes in, taking him down with effortless grace. Meanwhile in the infirmary, Damien is piecing together the puzzle, realizing how terrifying Halshul's presence can be. He understands now why Milia called her something weird like soul plunderer or whatever. She was afraid of Halshul. Outwardly she is a stunning woman and a formidable warrior. But the horrifying aura around her was more like monsters. Damien finds it interesting that she wasn't even using her full strength. It's both unsettling and fascinating. Don't worry too much, Milia. Damien reassures, emphasizing that while Halshul may have a harsh exterior, she doesn't seem genuinely bad. If you get to know her better, you might realize Halshul's actually someone worth understanding, he advises. Halshul stands in front of a buzzing crowd, her cloak swaying like she owns the place. She glances at her charred armor. Phew! I almost ended up a charcoal lump, she mutters. It's a relief that her armor held up. The mage is now unconscious on the floor, frothing in the mouth. Her mind races as she eyes her next opponent, another mage. Will her armor hold? A condescending voice cuts through the air. Your skills are decent, barbarian. Seems you're worthy of Lady Sigmilla's recommendation, says the presumptuous newcomer, making his entrance with a swagger. Halshul's eyes narrow. You're the type to get sold off for a few coins, parasite. She snaps back, oozing disdain. The newcomer's eyebrow twitches, mocking indignation. Do you think I stepped in just to earn pocket money? He sneers. It turns out he's here on Lady Sigmilla's request, a fact that leaves Halshul bewildered. Ophelia waves from the sidelines. Halshul smirks. No wonder. Connecting the dots in her head. She thought it was odd that she suddenly gained a lot of sparring partners. Is Lady Ophelia confirming my skills since we're partners now? Halshul muses. Focus and prepare yourself properly, barbarian, he chides. Oh, she's ready all right. The bout kicks. Haoshul receives new weapons, a gleaming long sword and daggers. She's mentally prepping to face Kenneth Bernstein, someone who wasn't in the original video game, but who's reputedly strong among the new students. But should she use her hidden strength now? Nah. She's keeping that ace up her sleeve. The announcement rings out. It's official, Aishanger Haoshul vs Kenneth Bernstein, the final bout. The arena's atmosphere is electric as the two face off. Haoshul launches forward, determined to take control of the match. Kenneth, with practiced ease, readies his staff to meet her challenge. But Haoshul isn't fazed. Lightning crackles around her, the magic barely scratching her armor. Kenneth ponders whether she's packing some anti-magic resistance. Determined to switch tactics, Kenneth activates his staff, a potent charge building. Boom! The shockwave crashes down. That was a close call. She would have been in danger if she hadn't parried with her dagger. The attack was so fast, as expected of lightning magic. Now she has to rely on her instincts on this. Fireballs rain down, a blazing barrage that demands swift decisions. Not giving me a moment's rest! Haoshul curses under her breath, adrenaline spiking. Before Kenneth can pop off the next spell, Haoshul charges with all she's got, sword raised high. Kenneth stands, muttering a spell under his breath. Haoshul descends, blades ready, sparking with energy. But a mysterious barrier pulses into life, halting her mid-strike. Kenneth's staff hums with power, all bets are off. A colossal explosion ensues, dwarfing the battlefield in light and sound. Haoshul's scream echoes, cutting through the din. Dust swirls in the air. Haoshul stands strong, but her head is tilted down. Kenneth points his staff at her, ready for another attack. That's unbelievably reckless, he thinks. His barrier spell is able to withstand an ogre attack. Breaking through with brute force was insane. Looks like Haoshul is standing, but unconscious, with drool dripping from her mouth. Strength isn't all that's needed here. Suddenly, Haoshul's eyes fly open. She's trying to get her bearings. They're locked in a battle of wits and power, but mentally, Haoshul is somewhere else. She's confused about her surroundings and freaked out because somehow, all her clothes are gone. A voice mocks her, questioning why she's struggling so much. She comes out of the shadows. It's Hercella, the original barbarian. But Haoshul snaps back that it's her first real fight with a mage. Hercella calls her excuses lame and criticizes her for passing out from just one lightning spell. In a fervent inner dialogue, Haoshul battles with herself, torn between holding back and going all out. She knows she's gotta keep some power hidden for safety reasons. There's a lot more at stake here than just winning a duel. But Hercella's judgment is brutal and she's not letting up. She thinks Haoshul's hesitating when she should be going for the jugular. Those words echo in her mind. You're not worthy. Hercella reminds her that no matter who she's up against, once the fight begins, it's an all-out battle with everything you've got. That's how she survived. Hercella steps closer. Looks like today is her lucky day. Since Haoshul's all passed out, she can show Kenneth what she's truly capable of. Back to reality, Kenneth looks on nervously. He's sweating, trying to figure out why Haoshul isn't folding under pressure. Then she moves, and releases a loud sigh. The smell of battle, smoke, and burnt flesh fills Hercella's senses. It's a thrilling, familiar rush. Kenneth senses a change. She's not the same person from moments ago. He's baffled. How is Haoshul still ticking after such a powerful attack? Without a warning, Haoshul strikes, shattering Kenneth's hope of an easy win. The clash is monumental. She's proving to be one mighty barbarian in his eyes. Anger flares in Kenneth. He's ready to go all fire and brimstone on Haoshul. But wait, she just catches his next attack with ease. Haoshul crushes his staff and his hand along with it, turning his confidence to sheer pain. With a vice-like hold, she grabs him by the hair, annoyed by the noise he's making. Without mercy, she declares that he die. The tension is electric as Haoshul shows no mercy, and the stage is set for an explosive resolution. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierces the silence. Stop! A voice commands, and a hand comes flying towards her. The sky looms large above her. When Haoshul regains consciousness, she's on the ground being held back by the instructor. Her eyes widen with shock when she sees the damage. Her opponent is lying face down a few meters away. His face is smeared with blood. Haoshul's voice is barely above a whisper, still trying to process the scene. Then, a corridor greets us, so quiet and unassuming. Haoshul strides into her room. You're here, Nigel states, her voice flat. She raises an eyebrow, quick to criticize, saying Haoshul's been excessive. Haoshul shrugs off the concern, even as Nigel warns that the royal family won't like the chaos she causes. Haoshul mutters her acknowledgement. I know. The instructor already grilled me about it. She throws off her bloody coat and unties her hair. The academy won't condone it, they say. But underneath, there's a hint of frustration. She clicks her tongue, thinking the instructor should have intervened sooner. There's a moment of introspection as Haoshul worries about losing consciousness again like today, fearing her Cella's influence taking over permanently. Her Cella's hold is dangerous, and Haoshul can't bear to lose everything she's fought for. Nigel's perceptive gaze sharpens, noticing the inner turmoil. "Did you lose control and go berserk again like last time?" Nigel asks bluntly. Haoshul stumbles over her words, she's been caught out. Nigel waves a dismissive hand. "It's obvious," she says, having seen the signs in Haoshul's behavior. Nigel rattles off the rumors, describing Haoshul's chaotic duel, and it's clear how intense it was, taking fire magic head-on, ripping apart opponents. Any sane person wouldn't hurt their body during battle. Haoshul counters awkwardly, admitting that the sight and smell of blood triggers something fierce in her. Nigel dryly replies, questioning if human blood is appetizing to her somehow. Switching to a lighter tone, Nigel insists it's time to refine Haoshul's flawed fighting style with practical training. Haoshul's face drops at the thought of more injuries. Nigel reassures her that it won't be a repeat of the past horrors. The scene shifts to a lecture hall, filled with an air of anticipation. Haoshul sits, mind buzzing. What on earth is Nigel planning? She preps herself for the next class about hostile entities. The term sounds daunting but is just a label for enemies of the Empire. Think goblins, trolls, and more, creatures from the Empire's storied past. There's talk of demonic species too, a newer menace on the scene. Haoshul scribbles away in her notebook. Somehow it feels different learning it directly compared to playing it in a game. Since she can't play as the character Damien and control the Holy Sword, she knows she'll need at least a paladin, or a priest for these creatures. The lecture rolls on, the instructor announcing a field exercise coming up in 2 weeks. Haoshul perks up at this. A monster habitat field trip? Where people could literally vanish without a trace. Haoshul realizes it's a perfect place for her enemies to strike. Later that day, Haoshul and Nigel talk in their room. Nigel sits spear in hand. She won't be allowed to accompany Haoshul during the field exercise. She agrees with Haoshul. If it were her, she'd seize the opportunity to attack. Haoshul, lying on the bed, declares that if they come at her, she has no choice but to kill them. She can take them glaring at her, but if they attack, she won't let it slide. Nigel reassures her, based on what she's seen, that Haoshul's skills are top-notch. But that guy, Sven, doesn't seem reckless enough to act without a plan. Meanwhile, Haoshul reflects that she hasn't revealed half of her strength yet. She's only used an ordinary steel longsword and gauntlet, and she hasn't used the imperial swordsmanship she'd learned from Nigel. She's tried to suppress much of her physical abilities. Well, except for that last one. They're hoping that Canute underestimates her strength, which makes things easier for them. But if it's an ambush in a monster habitat, they could lure monsters for a surprise attack. Or they might do a strategic move like drawn-out battles. Worst case? The enemy's tricky and hiding their true strength. However, Canute strikes Haoshul as someone who values honor. Would he really use all these dirty tactics? But Nigel muses there's no way to know. Grudge-driven actions defy logic, and honor means little in the face of enemies. Haoshul's thinking hard about the situation. Nigel suddenly hands her a piece of paper. They've got 2 weeks to prepare, with a monster subjugation request. That's the practical training that Nigel mentioned earlier. The mission? Taking down monsters, a real dive into practical training. This sounds like something straight out of an adventurer's guild. Haoshul tries to play off her prior knowledge, admitting she learned about it through the grapevine. Lucky timing though, because she's strapped for cash. Margrave Ludwig's orders not to touch savings make things stricter. Their only option? Earn and spend their own money. Failure's not an option. If they botch this job, who knows what chaos could follow. Fast forward 2 days, they're knee-deep in a leafy forest. Locals swore it was just a small dungeon, a handful of trolls and a stroll. Yet, the landscape screams otherwise. What they face is a gargantuan sinkhole, definitely not the walk in the park they anticipated. Overwhelmed by the sight, they're expected to climb down. Wait, with bare hands? So a day back, we're at this busy place with folks moving about, probably planning something big. Enter Minea, a D-rank adventurer who seems a little unsure but introduces herself anyway. She's all bundled up and a bit nervous, trying to make a good impression. Meanwhile, Haoshul is sizing her up, hands on hips, thinking she doesn't look too dependable. But hey, she's just a guide, right? What's the worst that could happen? Haoshul meets Minea with a handshake, getting this party organized. Haoshul asks the critical question. What's the quest? So, Nigel lays it out, an underground dungeon needing investigation. It's serious stuff. They're hunting down a troll in Baron Happel's territory. A knight got taken out last time, so the stakes are high. Haoshul's doubting if they can handle it, considering the previous casualty. Let's face it, trolls aren't your average bad guys. Here's the scoop, trolls regenerate like crazy, but apparently, Bleeding them out does the trick. Never simple, is it? Nigel's still explaining, emphasizing troll strength. Comparing trolls to humans, it's like comparing a train to a mouse. Oh, and the mission's recommended for B-rank mercs, but since they've got academy connections, they pulled some strings. Nigel reassures Harshel. You're good. We got this approved without a hitch. Though she's quick to remind that she won't be helping. Definitely no heroic backup. Flash forward to the present, they're in a deep, dark hole in the ground. There's tension in the air. They fumble with a lantern, lighting their way down the ladder to a proper dungeon. It's quite the drop, about 30 to 40 meters. Harshel's stepping into new territory here, a bit on edge with that rotten stench creeping in. Nigel, Manea, and Harshel descend, bracing themselves. It feels like dungeons of old, relic talk making it almost mystical. Still, the long, creepy hallway is unsettling. Manea wonders if trolls have always been about, or if they're new to the place. Harshel's mind is spinning with ideas. Suddenly, warning bells. Harshel spots corpses, and it ain't pretty, all knights or soldiers down by something nasty. Nigel gives a shocking update. Aside from the troll, there's an ogre lurking around. Panic ensues. Manea's worried, biting her nails. Who wouldn't be freaked by an ogre? Nigel, trying to calm Manea, boosts Harshel's confidence. A mere ogre? She smiles, all swagger. Harshel downplays it, but her advice is hardly comforting. The group's on high alert, nerves buzzing with sudden tension. Out of the shadows, a troll is munching on the corpses, not even noticing our trio. This is their shot. Harshel's ready to charge before anything else goes south. It's now or never. The plan, take it down fast, avoid the ogre's attention. Harshel's leap is set, sword drawn, ready to strike. She grips her weapon with focus, squaring off against the hulking troll. The troll snarls, fangs bared, and spits blood as Harshel closes in. There's no time wasted. She leaps and lands a vicious strike, severing its arm in a clean sweep, a classic move from our girl Harshel. She pushes her luck, wishing she could have gone for the clean cut. But hey, a severed arm is still a win. The beast, though, it's got that annoyingly quick regeneration thing going on, squelching sounds filling the air as it heals up. Harshel notes the slower regeneration on the severed parts and decides to test her theory further. Tension ramps up as the troll roars, enraged, lifting a massive club to strike back. Harshel's ready. She dodges gracefully as the troll's club smashes the ground, sending shockwaves through the floor. Her sword slides easily into her grip. She's in the zone. The troll grunts, poised to charge again. But before it can, Harshel slices its head off. Her blade swings swift and deadly. Surveying her handiwork, she's satisfied. The job is messier than expected, but then again, when is it not with trolls? Her smugness is short-lived. A sound draws her attention, feeling the ominous vibrations in the ground. Oh, here come reinforcements. More trolls, and they're not happy. Harshel braces herself as a new wave of trolls burst into view, howling with rage. Manea's in disbelief. How could 3 show up at once? But Nigel's all calm. Harshel isn't one to let a few trolls throw her off. We'll only be a hindrance to her, Nigel explains. It sinks in with Harshel that Nigel doesn't really plan on helping her out here. Determined, she charges forward, fully embracing the fight mode. Her movements are precise and fierce, slashing through the enemy with relentless tenacity. The battlefield erupts into chaos, and she's dodging blows like a pro. But every action has a reaction, and a swift troll punch catches her off guard. Manea looks on anxiously. Amidst the dust and chaos, Harshel pauses. She checks herself over. Even after a troll's punch, she's feeling surprisingly okay and not feeling much pain. Manea is stunned and asks Nigel if Harshel's okay after the blow. Don't worry. She's trained a lot, Nigel simply says. The team regroup and assesses the situation. There's one troll left. Nigel cautiously asks if she's okay in her head, checking if she's about to go berserk again. Yep, surprisingly Harshel feels fine and in total control of herself. Maybe it's because she kept her cool this time. But she actually feels more refreshed, like she just woke up. Suddenly, a vast, ominous figure blocks their path, a much beefier troll, the clear boss of this floor. Harshel marches forward, not the least bit intimidated. She launches herself into the air, aiming for the jugular with deadly precision. Her confidence is unwavering, her blade slicing through with a satisfying crunch. With a mighty leap, she lands triumphantly atop the fallen beast. Mission accomplished, she declares triumphantly. A week has passed, and the scene opens with a stark view of Academy. Harshel is feeling pretty confident. A smug grin, cigarette hanging from their lips. She's got an endless supply of magic cigarettes now. The spoils of the adventure have her thinking about how lucrative this is. Even after splurging on magic cigarettes, she still has a lot left over. Nigel wasn't too impressed, judging by her side eye, But Haoshul couldn't care less. She's thinking. And when the cash runs low, I'll just do it again. Suddenly, Asha interrupts her daydream. Was the adventure fun? Haoshul, still in high spirits, confirms it was great, though the constant smell of monsters was a bummer. Haoshul reflects on how much they've adapted since being thrust into this game world. She remembers when she first arrived and the sight of carnage made her queasy. Now, it's just another day, and they can handle fights with ease. Is it because she's adapted to this world? Or is this body slowly crushing her original spirit? Well, she doesn't care either way, as long as it doesn't interfere with her life here. Haoshul, catching up, asks if anything special happened while she was gone. Turns out, the past week was mostly routine lectures, with some injured students coming back to class finally. Talk shifts to the field exercise and where they were going to sent. Asha hasn't heard anything, but since they've been learning about kobolds and trolls in class, it would make sense to go and hunt those. She asks if Haoshul is coming to the field exercise. Haoshul replies that hands-on action beats sitting around in class. Then, Haoshul gets serious. There are also some things I need to take care of. Haoshul steps into a hallway, their minds seemingly juggling these thoughts. Just then, something catches her eye. It's Damien and Mila. Haoshul wonders what they're up to. Mila is her usual composed self, while Damien is engaging her in some light banter. In a flash, Haoshul is by their side, teasing. Surprise! Is this a date? Mila and Damien are startled. Haoshul asks Mila about her recovery and asks if they're boyfriend-girlfriend now. Mila denies it vigorously. They're just childhood friends. You're supposed to say yes in times like this, Mila. Haoshul scolds silently. Still, Haoshul is relieved to see she's okay, admitting she may have been too harsh during the duel. Mila remembers what Damien told her, that while Haoshul may be rough, she's not all bad. Mila brushes it off, saying there's no need to apologize and she agreed to the duel in the first place. She was planning to talk to her soon anyway, since they were in the same group for the field exercise. What do you mean same group? Haoshul reacts in surprise. She didn't know anything about the field exercise. Mila says it was all discussed at the end of last class. Color drains from Haoshul's face. She remembers Asha saying she wasn't interested in that class, and totally forgetting to tell her. Haoshul is huffing and puffing through the forest. Finally arriving, she breathes a sigh of relief. She checks her gear and mutters about how she was able to get her gear ready on time. She's still annoyed at Asha for forgetting to tell her about the field exercise. Suddenly, someone calls out to her, snapping her out of her thoughts. It's Milia, carrying her gear and all set for the day's adventure. Haoshul can't resist poking fun. Where are you going with that big bag? Milia rolls her eyes, explaining that it's a 5-day trip. Anyway, the rest of the team are waiting over there. Oh, are there more? Haoshul asks. She looks at the two other members. She stares at them. One was one of the guys she took out during the duel, and the other was a nun, one of her enemies in the video game story. Seems like whoever made this lineup was really messing with her, Haoshul thinks. Later that day, they enter Grey Forest. Legend has it that this was where one of the 12 knights of Charlemagne defeated a rock dragon. Today, it's a rugged and massive forest filled with oddly shaped rocks and giant trees. Sending students here with kobolds and trolls lurking? Some are gonna get into real trouble if they're careless. But no slowing down, time for introductions. Haoshul starts off, introducing herself and that she can handle almost all weapons. She warns not to rely on her too much, though. Milia jumps in. She uses the rapier and a small shield. Next, Hans introduces himself. His weapons are the shield and axe, and he brought torches to ward away the trolls. Last there's Lana, a trainee warrior cleric. Her specialty is healing. It's not that healing is your specialty. Haoshul thinks to herself. It's that healing is your only specialty. But it's okay, Haoshul knows that her healing powers will become very powerful in the future. So, what's next? Haoshul asks. Just wandering through the woods isn't a plan. Hans says they have to set up a camp to stay at for the duration of the exercise. Haoshul recalls a stream nearby, sounds useful now. But hold up. Something's wrong, she senses it. Stop! She yells. Monsters are closing in from the front, 10 of them. A horde of kobolds is charging full speed. Hans is ready, calling for Milia to take cover. A kobold leaps, screaming, right at them. Hans blocks with his shield, muscles straining. He counters with a fierce strike, taking down the beast. Milia, with her rapier, fights fearlessly, piercing one right through. You fight better than I thought. Haoshul praises her. But wait, something feels off. Weren't there supposed to be 10 kobolds? She turns to Lana, who's surrounded on all sides. A scream pierces the air. The forest is splattered with blood, setting a tense scene. Haoshul grumbles, annoyed that they made her step in and use her weapon. She wanted this to be a learning experience for the newbies. Lana, shivering and thankful, reassures Haoshul she's alright, though she still seems shaken up. Haoshul wonders if she will ever be useful to the party. The group stands before a large cave. It's ominous but seems like a decent place to make camp for the night. Haoshul scouts ahead as Lana questions if they're really safe here. Haoshul reassures her. You're with me, why worry? Everyone sets up and gets ready to rest. Today's mission was finding shelter, and they already accomplished it. Suddenly, Hans grunts in pain. Looks like he has a wound on his leg. He brushes it off, saying he got scratched fighting those kobolds. Lana offers to heal him, while Milia and Haoshul get busy organizing their camp. Healing is quick and efficient, leaving Haoshul in awe of Lana's healing skills. Haoshul and Lana bond a bit, Lana commenting on Haoshul's strength and taking on those kobolds to protect her. Lana asks if everyone in Kahar is strong. Well, not everyone, Haoshul replies, remembering her deputy, Jahan. She explains that it's because she trains really hard. Night falls. The group wraps up dinner and chat about setting up a watch to guard the cave entrance. Hans declares that it will have to be between the three of them, as Lana can't fight. Lana's apologetic, but Haoshul pats her shoulder, telling her not to worry. She'll take the first watch. As the night deepens, Haoshul takes a moment to herself, contemplating under the stars. Her eyes slowly open as she senses something in the distance. Is it time already? She murmurs. She wakes Milia up. Milia asks groggily if it's her turn now and tells Haoshul to get some sleep. But Haoshul's got business to attend to. Milia's worried and asks what's going on. Haoshul wonders if Milia noticed the presence outside. It's just something good kids shouldn't see, she mutters. She tells Milia she'll be back by morning. But if she doesn't, just tell them the trolls got her. Milia confronts her, worried for her safety. Haoshul's temper flares. Are you going to try to stop me with that puny sword of yours? The sight frightens Milia. She reminds Milia that there's someone who has been trying to kill her since orientation, and this was something she needed to finish. If you're really worried about me, Haoshul says while walking away, pray that he doesn't intend to kill me and only wants a conversation. Haoshul lights a match, casting a soft glow in the darkness. She takes a moment, lighting her cigarette and inhaling deeply under the starlit sky. She's alone, feeling the solitude, realizing no one followed her out here. She remembers how hard it was to get Milia off her. Good thing she decided not to follow. Maybe it's better this way. Perhaps keeping her distance is the right call. Meanwhile, there's a camp with an ominous air. Someone sits, seemingly waiting for confrontation. Haoshul approaches, suggesting they could talk things out instead of fighting. As expected you came, Canute tells her. Like a monster crawling out of the darkness. Haoshul replies that she has very keen senses. She reminds him that he was the one openly talking about murdering her at the academy. Haoshul's honesty slices through. She doesn't remember him, or his past grudges. The Danes' history is grim. Territories were lost, people were lost, and these bitter memories brewed this thirst for revenge. I'm really sorry. She goes on. She too was forced to do those things in order to survive. If she could go back, she would do things differently. She knows it's humiliating, but she pleads with him to try and talk it out instead of fighting. She's willing to get down on her knees and apologize if that's what it takes. But he, stubborn as ever, can't let go. You talk too much for a Kahar, he mutters. Without warning, he draws his weapon and attacks. Looks like diplomacy has failed and combat now begins. The two powers collide. Haoshul curses. She was really hoping to resolve this through dialogue. And it looks like this guy has also been hiding his true power. It's totally different from the exams. Her opponent's fierce, but she's convinced that she can beat him. The verbal spat continues during combat. He taunts her, full of rage. Why would she want to apologize to him if she can't even remember his face? Background thoughts unravel like a story. His home, the Dane kingdom, was a weak nation overshadowed by two strong countries. They were a small country with a small population, so all men were trained to be as strong warriors. When the Dane kingdom split from the empire, his family was one of those who chose to stay with the empire, and they lived peacefully near the borders. A nostalgic flashback, a moment with his sister, Astrid. She pleads with him to play with her instead of practicing. No can do, replies Canute. A warrior shouldn't neglect his training. Astrid pleads some more. There's no need to fight, they're within the empire's border. There's peace here. Just then, someone walks in. Don't tempt your brother too much, Astrid. It's their dad, with fresh kill on his shoulder. They all welcome him home warmly. These were Canute's memories of peaceful days with his family. But he can barely remember their faces anymore. It's funny how naive he was then, believing that those peaceful days would last forever. Suddenly, flames sprout, smoke rises, twisting memories into a cruel reality. Canute stares at the silhouette of a dark rider approaching. His peaceful life with his family was shattered the day the Kahars raided their home. Canute charges, blood smeared and furious. Everything blurs as past horrors clash with present fury. We're taken back to a tragic memory, a burning village, figures on horseback, smoke clouding the sky. It's haunting. Blood splatters and despair follows. Canute's world shattered, leaving nothing but echoes of pain and a vow for strength. Sirkin picks up a trembling Astrid. This kid looks like she's the same age as you, Halshel's father declares, as she pleads for mercy. From the shadows, he asks if he would like her as a gift. I don't need it, a young Halshel replies. Kill her or give her to someone else, she adds. Her father laughs in agreement. Back in the present, blades cross under the night sky. Canute recalls being left for dead, but luck or fate spared him. But his family was gone. Distorted memories torture him still, of his mother and father being killed and his sister being kidnapped. They were trampled on as if they were toys. The roar of the battle is deafening. Do you think I would leave you be, after everything? Halshel's on the defensive, trying to dodge his flurry of attacks. This is power meeting power, a storm of will. The fight spirals. Both adversaries dance on the brink of savagery. Silence blankets the landscape briefly. Halshel has retreated onto a nearby tree branch. She questions herself. What did she expect would happen when she came here? She was a villain who had massacred countless people, and Canute was a victim. She glances at the engraving on her sword that says, 12 swords that protect humanity. And it seems to ignite a new resolve within her. Do what you want, she tells Canute. But be prepared, because I'm going to do everything in my power to survive, and save this world from the destruction that is coming. In a split second, Halshel has launched herself at her opponent, and they collide again. You want to survive so you can save the world? Canute asks incredulously. What right does a monster like you have to say that? Pain and fury blend into a desperate shout. With a surge of power, Halshel breaks through Canute's weapon. Halshel screams that it's him who doesn't understand. Doesn't he realize that she's haunted by all her wrongdoings and trying to live a better life from now on? But Canute doesn't really give a damn about the feelings of a monster. When his family died, he made a vow. An explosive shift in the atmosphere signals a new phase. And now it's time to fulfill it, Canute thunders. Halshel is shocked at this new surge of power. Canute's spear flies through the air, slicing the night with a deadly gleam, and signaling the start of the war. Halshel, eyes blazing with shock, feels the force coming right for her. The ground shakes as the spear hits, a massive explosion lighting up the night. Amidst the debris, Halshel chuckles, holding on to her injured arm. Canute was a holy warrior of Bolberg. She wasn't expecting this. She knows she's up against a warrior blessed by some crazy god power. She's running calculations in her mind, figuring out her next move. Mages, she can usually shrug off without much fuss, and most warriors are no match for her raw strength. But sacred knights? Yeah, they're a different beast entirely. They can enhance their strength with blessings and perform miracles despite their injuries. Lucky for her, she knows about these holy knights pretty well, from playing the video game. The Spear of War has a sure hit attack that makes it difficult to dodge. And these knights have no healing powers but packed with strength and are tough nuts to crack. So what's the plan? Get up close and personal, don't give him time to whip out those crazy abilities. Halshel goes in for an attack, her blade singing through the air as she closes in on Canute. It's a clash of titans, each strike echoing with their will to survive. Canute's glare burns as he picks his broken weapon from the ground, rallying his spirit with a booming shout to his god, Bilberg. Halshel realizes he's really upping the ante. Is she ready for this level of chaos? But then, another explosion follows as Canute's weapon smashes through her defenses, almost catching her off guard. Both pause as the dust settles. Canute, bloody but unbowed. Halshel, breathless from dodging death. Canute sees her still standing and remarks, "You dodged it. You're really a monster." Halshel can't believe he used his broken axe handle as a spear. "Does this look like a dodge to you?" she asks, showing her bloody face. And what's with calling her a monster this and monster that this whole time? It was getting annoying. Canute's shocked that she's still alive. How long can he keep this up? He has to finish this soon. Whispers of emotion and memory bring foreboding. He chants as a ghostly weapon forms in his hand. Meanwhile, Halshel's like, "Oh, things just got complicated." She's hanging on, but her mind races. What hidden powers does he have up his sleeve? Then, diving into the depths of her consciousness, she's at a crossroads. Does she tap into that dark power, the one she's avoided for so long? As Canute lunges with a warrior's cry, she readies her guard. Their blades clash with an intensity that could split the earth. Halshel retaliates with a swing that draws blood. Canute stumbles back, he's caught off guard. Did she just use the Imperial Sword technique? Don't think you can become a hero just by learning the Imperial technique. He snarls. To him, she's just a monster. Halshul clenches her fist and tells him to shut up. I've come all this way to avoid becoming a monster, she exclaims. Suddenly time stops, and Halshul comes face to face with Hercella underwater tinted blood red. Really? Hercella asks with a smirk. She tells Halshul to look at herself now. Did she really come all this way to avoid becoming a monster? The battle rages on between Halshul and Canute. Halshul swings her blade with every ounce of strength, while Canute tries to hold his ground. He groans, blood spilling from his wounds. Canute's spear hits the ground with a clatter. He's desperate and refuses to end like this. I won't let it end this way, he mutters, teeth gritted with resolve. Driven by sheer willpower, he calls forth a dark power, hoping to become a monster too. But Halshul is faster, as she grabs him by and smashes him down to the ground. Her eyes widen with an unyielding determination. The night sky witnesses the finality of her gauntlet as it descends on Canute. Blood and shadows mark the end of this bloody encounter. Somewhere deep and dark, Halshul floats in an endless pool. An eerie smile forms on her face, her grasp on reality slipping. She's so happy here that it scares her. What have I become? She wonders, a sense of dread mingling with her victory. She's about to deal the final blow, when the mysterious inscription on her sword catches her attention. Confusion floods her mind. What's this all about? She questions aloud, trying to piece together the chaos. Suddenly, her arm is in excruciating pain. She tears off the gauntlet, and it smashes to the ground. But why? What is this monstrosity that's trying to swallow her? And what is that weapon? She demands, staring at the bloody gauntlet in horror. Suddenly, Canute coughs. Have you finally come to your senses? He asks. You don't want to become a monster? Canute finds it weirdly funny. After that barbaric display, he despises her even more for rationalizing all this killing with eloquent words about saving the world. Darkness begins to engulf Canute, his life slipping away. Yet, he clings to a memory of Astrid, perhaps finding solace in his final moments. He curses Halshul, telling her he'll be watching her struggle from above. Despite everything, Halshul feels a pang of sorrow watching him fade away. She apologizes for not sharing all the details. In the future, so many people will die, and there will be no hope in the world until Damien is reborn as a true warrior, she murmurs. She wonders how many more people like Canute want her dead out there. It's not like she did it. It was the old Hercella, before she woke in this body. She ponders her current situation while walking back to the cave. But her injuries are too much, and she finally loses consciousness. When she regains consciousness, she hears people talking. Suddenly, she jolts awake with a sharp breath, startled. Milia and Lana rush to her side, concern etched on their faces. Halshul asks what happened with the field exercise. Lana exclaims that they're the ones who should be asking what happened to her. Lana reveals the gravity of their circumstances. She explains how close Halshul came to death. She had a penetrating wound and even a curse. A curse? Halshul is shocked. Could it be from the Frost Gauntlet? Milia tries to calm Lana down and asks Halshul. So, did things work out well? Well, as you can see, Halshul says. Things did not work out well. Plus it ended up in a result that Milia would hate to hear. But then, Milia places a comforting hand on her shoulder. She gives an understanding smile. Judging from her injuries, whatever happened was something beyond her control. And so finally, the field exercise wrapped up. Reports indicate that out of 140, only 126 returned. The rest were either dead or missing. But the most interesting part was that Canute's name was absent from the list of the dead. Your likes help Benza make more juicy content. Go on and hit that bell icon. Peace, send him out.